the legendary Hollywood director. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 876, new list of opponents. Please subscribe and vote. Boss. A few days later after the visit, Lemon went to the company at 9 AM, and a female clerk from Blue Butterfly Pictures stopped him. This year's Oscar nominees are out, and Mr. Lyman wants to ask for your opinion. Put it on my desk, and I'll talk to him after I finish reading it. On January 22nd, the organizer of the Oscars, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which has attracted the attention of movie fans, took the lead in announcing the excellent works nominated for the grand prize. Unsurprisingly, films like Slumdog Millionaire and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button became popular in the selection. In addition, after Lemon carefully browsed the list, he found that Firefly and Marvel also had good performances last year. Iron Man and The Incredible Hulk jointly contracted most of the technical awards. The former was nominated for Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Effects, and Best Visual Effects. The latter was also nominated for Best Visual Effects. The digital field was once again on the list to show its presence. If we count the nominations for Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design and Best Makeup for the Golden Army 2, 7 technical awards, and 6 repeated nominations. This is why Lemon commented that, if Gyro is not a director, he will be very popular as an art director, because the movies he made have been nominated for Makeup and Costume awards, and occasionally he can get the Best Editing award, to show his talents in other aspects. Although fans don't pay much attention to these awards, after all, the selection is behind the scenes. But this year's scenery is not only David Fincher and Danny Boyle. Lemon's R-rated film District 9 was also nominated for Best Director, Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay and Best Actor. The attitude of the Big Four also made the audience who like this movie very proud. As many film critics commented, District 9 is an ethical film under the science fiction system. Many things are just hidden behind the violent appearance, and it is not difficult to find. Speaking of which, this is the third time Lemon has been nominated for Best Director. I just don't know if those old stubborn people will still make a fuss about age, but it doesn't matter. The Oscars are a platform to expand the fruits of victory and share the benefits and fame. After thinking about it, he still had to make the necessary preparations. Lemon called Lyman, who was discussing the next step of the promotion of Museum to at Lionsgate films at that time, to slightly increase the popularity and prevent the box office from falling so quickly. Make time in the afternoon. We have to get in touch with Mr. Coppola. In this regard, you also need to hire a professional public relations team to keep a close eye on it and show up in front of the judges more often. The annual awards season is the busiest and most concerned period for the Academy judges. Most of them live more comfortably on this. Also, the publicity in preparation for Thor and Captain America can also be launched. Those cooperating brands and sponsors will help us. Remember to connect with them for the publicity and promotion plan. I see. That's it. See you in the afternoon. After hanging up the phone, Lemon informed Francis Coppola in advance. In the past 2 years, Sofia has gained a lot of fame in Europe with the project her provided by Lemon, and has won many awards, especially those regional film festivals that are not in the mainstream. After finishing all this, he looked at the post-production progress of Captain America. At 4 PM, Lemon met up with Lyman and others, and drove to Coppola Manor. The environment here is still suitable for living. It can be seen that someone often takes care of it. The large lawn is trimmed without a trace of mess. Lemon took the lead and shook hands with Francis politely. Lyman, the public relations representative, followed behind him, but they didn't mean to get close. Lemon, come, let me introduce you. Francis, with a hearty smile, led several familiar filmmakers and shook hands politely one by one. When the chat was almost over, Francis and Lemon found a gap and went to the study to sit face to face. District 9 is great, much better than Iron Man. Lemon smiled at the right time and didn't really take the ridicule of the great director to heart. One is to make it satisfying for oneself, the other is to make it satisfying for the audience. In terms of profit and benefit, Iron Man beats District 9, but in terms of word of mouth and future film history ranking, District 9 is better. Of course, there is not much room for comparison between the two. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages, and both are directed by Lyman himself. What's more, at the Oscars, it is obvious that District 9 will have room for maneuver and win a high-value award. Francis is also unambiguous. He himself has been through this and knows that the selection process is not necessarily completely feasible based on the work alone. The Oscars are inherently subjective and there is no unified standard. I want to know what you want to do most in PR. Best actor, best director. Neither Edward nor I would hate gilding. Lyman looked at Francis. There's still a month until the award ceremony, so there's not much time. I'm not so sure either. I can only say I'll try my best. Who can say for sure about judging? My face may not work well. Don't worry, I won't be surprised, no matter what the result is. It's not like you can't make movies without it. Haha, as long as you can make more excellent movies, the organizing committee will compensate you sooner or later. They have always been like this. You know, you're only 33 years old. Most famous directors are older than you, and they also need this kind of formal recognition. It looks like I'm going to be a professional runner-up. Lyman shrugged. But in fact, he had long known his disadvantages from the PR team, and it has always been his age. If he was $40 million Baby might have won the Golden Man for director. What's more, No Country for Old Men has a deeper reality. District 9 reflects racial issues and has anti-war thinking. But even so, Firefly still needs this platform. Why not actively participate in creating additional copyright value? Anyway, there is nothing to lose. Everyone is trying to fight for it. If the judges don't like it, I will accept it. It's not a big problem. Don't worry too much. By the way, what is Sophia doing recently? She went on a trip with her friends to relax. She was a little irritable some time ago. After her, do you have any new filming plans? Many people in the industry have handed her scripts, but I haven't seen any satisfactory and heartwarming stories. Really? Maybe there is a suitable script library in my company. When she comes back, let her contact me. I would like to thank Sophia for your care. It should be. She is a very good director with a delicate style. Lyman praised sincerely. And which father doesn't want to see his children become successful? He didn't hide his proud smile. Chapter 87 February. Subscriptions. Votes required. After the Oscars were coordinated and the period of leisure was spent, February came. It was a very ordinary day. As soon as he entered the office, the latest market data of Museum 2 was already on Lyman's desk. Just yesterday, the annual Super Bowl American Football League final kicked off at 7 a.m. in Raymond James Stadium in Florida. The two teams that made it to the final showdown this year were the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals. Affected by the Super Bowl, the box office revenue of the North American film market last week fell by 20% compared with the previous week. The audience's entertainment method has added a new one, watching the team they support in front of the TV, which has diverted the crowd in the theater. But the good news is that the total box office revenue in January 2009 increased by a strong 23% compared with the same period last year, and the number of moviegoers also increased by 18%. This can be said to be a small contribution to the financial tsunami. Because no matter what, the lipstick effect has given Hollywood a good start since the second half of last year. And the ranking of the North American box office weekly chart from January 26th to February 1st has also changed a lot. First, the two-time champion Museum 2 was pushed off the throne by Taken, which was co-produced by Luc Besson. The film was funded by 20th Century Fox and produced by Europa Films. It also invited Liam Neeson, a veteran actor who is quite familiar to European and American audiences, to play the leading role. At the beginning, Fox just wanted to make some money in the international market and did not have much hope for the project. As a result, the film swept $68.8 million worldwide and was arranged by 20th Century Fox to be released on Super Bowl weekend, which brought a big surprise to both companies. You know, the cost of Taken was less than $50 million. It landed in the United States on the premise of selling well overseas. In the first weekend, it opened in 3,183 theaters and won $24.63 million, successfully landing on the weekly chart. It also broke the Super Bowl weekend opening box office record and the opening box office record of Luc Besson's personal production film, which made Fox overjoyed. Using its position of power, Fox also managed to get a PG-13 rating for a movie like Taken that has a lot of fighting scenes and only cut about 2 minutes of content. It can be said that the violence in the movie was completely preserved. The MPAA has always been very lenient with the 5 major movies. In terms of the opening reputation, Rotten Tomatoes freshness is 58%, the media comprehensive score is 48 points, the IMDb user score is 7.8, and the Yahoo user score is a. It is the best rated movie among the large-scale opening movies last week, and the box office stamina is not bad. Ranked third is another new movie, the American version of Rose Flower, Red Lotus. The movie itself is adapted from the Hollywood twin sister of the Korean thriller of the same name, Rose Flower, Red Lotus. Since the box office success of the American version of The Ring in 1998, it has gradually triggered a trend of Hollywood remaking Asian movies, and even a remake won the Oscar for Best Picture, The Departed. So DreamWorks, which pioneered it, has set its sights on the highest grossing thriller in Korean film history, Rose Flower, Red Lotus. Although the original film had good box office performance and broke many records of Korean horror films, the creators of the American version focus more on the commercial vulgar adaptation. The Rotten Tomatoes freshness was only 36%, and the media's comprehensive score was 44, mostly ridiculed. The two directors seemed to have quickly browsed the original film and then copied the scare scenes of other horror films. The movie spent too much time on the close-up of the door handle and the bird's eye view of everything in the room, but unfortunately ignored the characters. If you haven't seen those cheap horror movies that you forget as soon as you turn your head, it's really hard for me to describe this movie to you. The quality of the American version was a failure. It only earned $10.51 million in 2,344 theaters over the 3 days of the weekend, which is really not outstanding. With such a weak start, it is estimated that the final box office will only be around $30 to $40 million, which may not be able to make back the investment. Speaking of Museum 2, its trend is not optimistic, but it is not collapsing quickly either. Because similar things often happen in Hollywood, a masterpiece recognized by the industry is not impressive at the box office. A commercial film that can only touch the passing line. The results look good. The reason is actually very simple. Putting aside factors such as schedule and opponents, it is just a question of popularity and audience. After all, works that are too thoughtful always affect the popularity of the works. Coincidentally, the Museum 2 has no connotation. The fact that spoofs and family comedies can often squeeze into the annual list can also show the breadth of the audience of this subject. Even in order to make room, the Museum 2 was reduced to 3,000 theaters and a 24% scheduling share. It still earned $17.48 million in the third weekend, a slight decrease of 35%, and remained in the second place. The cumulative box office of $126 million in 3 weeks was released. The first Hollywood work that broke $100 million in 2009 was Born. Judging from the results, breaking $100 million is nothing special. The Museum 2 invested $150 million after all, and the height of the expected results is far different from ordinary works. This can also be estimated from the previous performance, so there is nothing surprising. But if we analyze the box office trend in detail, it still reveals that it is not easy. The reputation and evaluation are not as good as the previous one, but the investment is much higher than the previous one. At first glance, it feels very bad. However, the audience is still strong. In the third week of screening, the attendance rate has even shown a warming trend. According to Lyman's research, the reason for the warming is that Museum 2 is not as bad as the media said, and there are no excellent family comedies in the same period, but there are many excellent thrillers, which makes those fans who want to relax spontaneously walk into the venue of Museum 2. This is it's all due to the contrast of peers, because there are many thrillers. As for the remaining works, Hotel for Dogs, released on January 24th, which had a bad start, maintained a fairly good box office trend, again taking in $8.7 million, a drop of only 32%, staying in 4th place, Clint Eastwood's last screen performance, and also the highest grossing screen performance. Grand Car remained strong after 8 weeks of release, earning $8.6 million in 2,615 theaters over the 3 days of the weekend, a drop of 47%, rising against the trend to 5th place, with a cumulative global box office of $110 million, officially surpassing the $103 million of The Line of Fire, breaking Eastwood's box office record for directing and acting, and Slumdog Millionaire, which has been invincible among major film critics associations, increased its screening scale of 222 theaters again last week, earning $7.68 million in 1,633 theaters over the 3 days of the weekend, a small drop of 28%. Underworld, Rise of the Wolves was the runner-up last week, but this time it plummeted 65% and slipped to 7th place. The cumulative box office in 2 weeks was $32.78 million, continuing the worst performance in the second week among the 3 works. Lionsgate's My Bloody Valentine 3D still earned $4.26 million after cutting the release scale by nearly half, ranking 9th, and the cumulative box office in 3 weeks was $44.6 million. It is fortunate that the worst fantasy movie Anchor did not fall out of the top 10 this week. Of course, Warner doesn't care, so the film took in $3.7 million in 2,655 theaters in 3 days over the weekend, plummeting again by 52%. The cumulative box office in North America is only $12.79 million, and no one cares. It's a loss, so Warner can afford it. Chapter 878 Sweet, subscribe, vote. After entering February, the dominance of the schedule of Museum 2 will decline faster and faster as time goes by, but in general, the final box office will not be too bad, because the film has been released for 3 weeks, and has earned $142 million overseas, with a global cumulative box office of $268 million. There should be no problem in breaking the $400 million mark, but the profit margin is not as high as expected. If Lyman were to evaluate it, it would be that the sequel, which should have taken the popularity of the first film and headed for the $500 million mark, withered before it even started. Tuesday morning, February 17th. Joseph, who was dealing with some management trivia in the office, received a call, frowned, and reported a piece of news to Lyman about the delay of the production cycle of the museum series. Originally, because the screening of the second film was not very ideal, Lyman suggested to put it on ice for a few years to slightly increase the audience's freshness. When Lyman nodded in agreement, he found that the implementation was not so smooth. After all, the vested interests certainly don't want any accidents out of control in this series. The filming team, including director Jay Rogers, lead actor Ben Stiller, and CAA have all expressed their dissatisfaction in a tactful way. Lionsgate also thinks we are overthinking it, but they respect our decision. Maybe the second part just needs to be refined in terms of the plot. Joseph asked a question after talking about the reactions from all parties. Although many media film critics and audiences say that the plot and spoofs of the second part are not as eye-catching as the first part, is the gap between the two parts really that big? I don't think the script is a problem. At least it is not the biggest problem for the sequel to fall short of expectations. They all think that $400 million is already very good, and it's good to maintain the status quo. TSK, this is just an appearance. Lyman's analysis is correct. The audience market has aesthetic fatigue with this play. The repeated themes and backgrounds without much conflict or upgraded structure will make people feel that it is not outstanding. Is the second part really bad? Not necessarily, and Lyman shook his head and said, some people only value the money brought to them by this play. If they don't shoot it, they will lose a lot of income. Some people hope to use this play to improve their status and popularity, but they are all thinking about themselves. Why don't they see that Firefly has encountered difficulties? If the third part is still released 2 years later, how strong can it be under the current situation? It's nothing but a waste of effort. Lionsgate, as the distributor, has low risk and a steady profit. As the main creator is a major part of the filming, the salary can be negotiated in advance, and money can be pocketed while filming. If it fails, it will not be affected much, because of the first 2 films. Only Firefly, as the investor, has been under the greatest pressure. Now that the market is not right, what is the benefit of starting the project? It is right to make a profit, and it is unlucky to lose money. Even if it is a gamble, you should choose to bet decisively when the chance of winning is greater. Lyman looked at Joseph and said, frankly, I know that doing this, especially when the first 2 films in the series can make profits, will be criticized for not starting, but this is Hollywood, and any dissatisfaction must be suppressed. Just reply to them like this: Museum 3 will not be launched in 8 or 9 years, let them make plans early, and there is no need to help coordinate the schedule. Okay, let's not talk about this. There is a cocktail party tonight, and you can also attend. Joseph hesitated and turned to leave. Lyman knew that Joseph might be thinking that the delay was too long, and the influence on the market of the work would also decline. But at this hurdle, it would rather not make any money than ruin the series. In the original Time and Space, 20th Century Fox also felt something was wrong, and it couldn't help but launch Museum 3 after 5 years, but it also completely ruined the future of the series. In Lyman's impression, Fox was quite chaotic at that time. Even if the main creators collectively cut their salaries and felt that there was a way, they couldn't save anything. With a production budget of $127 million and a lot of publicity, the result was the worst performance of the series, $320 million, which was $90 million less than the first one, and it was a loss. If you really want to calm the market, you have to learn from Warner. At least 8 years of freezing period, use time to warm up good memories, and play the sentimental card. The cocktail party that Lyman and Joseph were going to was an evening party for the purpose of friendly exchanges. Strictly speaking, it was indeed like this. What was a little special was that the president would bring his wife to attend. Hollywood is inseparable from politics. In fact, they have been sending deliberately beautified and difficult to write to the outside world. It's just that Firefly, which is directed by Lyman, doesn't like to work in that direction. He just wants to improve his film and television map while gaining fame and fortune. People live a lifetime. With such an opportunity, they must leave something behind. He hopes that in the film history of 100 years, when people evaluate him, the positive comments with a little admiration will be enough, but this does not mean that he has to deliberately alienate himself. That's not normal. If someone can enter here, they will find that the most influential people in the circle are basically here. There are not too many people, only about 100, and if you count the female companions, the output value is 30 to 40 billion every year, only counting the box office. In fact, this number is not a problem to multiply 5 times. Offline, and copyright can continue to attract money. It can even be said that there are only so many people in the upper echelons of the circle with the greatest influence in the global film and television industry, and they have divided more than half of Hollywood's profits. The atmosphere was harmonious, and former competitors became friends. Lyman sat in the middle, slightly forward, and looked at it thoughtfully. After being invited, his wealth, career, background, and hard power were not enough to get him closer to the president, although he had seen that person's face too many times in his previous life. This was actually for the president's own sake, so he took action immediately after introducing a series of economic boosting policies and filling the big and small holes left by the previous term and arranging positions for his supporters behind him. Hollywood may not seem to be that powerful, but it cannot be ignored in entertainment, public opinion, and consciousness guidance. The president certainly doesn't want too many people who oppose him or don't understand him. That's very bad. Just look at how some war-themed works have been mocked openly and secretly after the previous term stepped down. It's really disgusting. Hollywood should have no problem with 10 government propaganda agencies. Although the person behind him has developed into a consortium involving oil, military industry, and banks, the 3 most capable of dealing with the country, and expanding rapidly, it is not hard to imagine what father and son are both presidents has brought to them, and the people behind them, and it cannot shut everyone's mouth. Those public intellectuals certainly won't say these when they clamor for freedom and sweetness. Chapter 879, Planting the Seeds in the X-Men. Please subscribe and vote. The president stood on the podium and spoke eloquently. This guy's eloquence is beyond reproach. In fact, in the United States, if you can't speak well, how can you canvass for votes? This is a very important skill. Before you have the ability to act, if you can't even speak well, how can the people believe that you can do a good job? When he talked about a middle-aged man who jumped into the sea in despair after losing his job, he blamed himself even more. He failed to lower the unemployment rate and stabilize the market. He was not familiar with the work less than 2 months after taking office. I took the blame. Do you understand? The tone gradually became heavy. The people below, including Lyman and Joseph, fell silent. Some of them were good at acting and couldn't stop crying. Lyman also wanted to do this, but he really couldn't understand the sadness and join it. He only appeared emotional when he was writing a script or had some creative inspiration. After all, his life was not bad. Among the people present, how many are really sad? Including the one above. Apart from other things, the Hollywood market is growing against the trend. As long as the movies are good, there will be more audiences. The film market has always refreshed the performance record set last year. But at this time, Rupert Murdoch, the head of News Corporation, stood up and was willing to donate $15 million in cash and equivalent materials to relieve the pressure of some people, which suddenly shocked the other participants in the reception. Didn't you say this before coming? Wasn't it supposed to be an exchange meeting? What's wrong? The script has changed, and it has temporarily become a charity reception. Lyman looked at the expressions of the people around him and thought secretly, is this the reason why News Corporation can get away when it encounters a difficult problem that is extremely difficult to solve? Great, you thick-browed and big-eyed guy, you hooked up with the president so quickly, and the previous one just stepped down not long ago. Maybe Murdoch paid much more than this, and even reached a deal with various parties. The loss is not small, but compared with the dismemberment of the huge News Corporation or the change of a powerful family, it is still worth it. After all, it is a typical case of being caught for dirty hands and feet. Of course, whether it was proactive or a trustee, to make the president happy, everyone was more or less generous after they realized it. In fact, they didn't pay much. It was charitable. They could deduct taxes by going to the foundation and doing some things. In this way, they could get some back in disguise. What's more, they could make money after donating, so it wasn't a big loss. Increasing some goodwill and getting closer is also an intangible return. It was just a short while. Although nearly 300 million yuan in donations is a drop in the bucket for an entire country, it can still solve some needs to a certain extent if the goal is narrowed down. After this incident, there were no more troubles at the reception. The president took his wife's arm and approached everyone to chat, and the atmosphere became relaxed again. As the owner of Man Media, a second-tier top media company that is below the 5 majors and a flying giants, and is very close to Lionsgate, Lyman also felt the closeness released by the president. He also took half a minute to exchange polite words with each other. The two shook hands and talked, and no one else would come over. This is the etiquette in formal social occasions. After that, the president left quickly after meeting the people he was supposed to meet, but Lyman had already integrated into the cocktail party. To be honest, the more formal the occasion, the more boring it is, and there is nothing to talk about. In the process of building diplomatic social networks, Lyman often focused his energy on the female companions of some bigwigs. One of them, he had seen on the news program on TV. She was a popular female host on the Fox News channel. She had a high degree, a good image, and good conversation, but the person she was holding was old enough to be her father. Of course, if it was really a father-daughter relationship, it was hard to say. Lyman only knew that the person was the general manager of Fox Overseas TV network, and he had never had any dealings with her. The Oscars are coming soon. Lyman, your District 9 has a good chance. Bill McNichol, an old acquaintance who is in charge of Fox's film distribution business, came over and talked about the scene and changed the topic. By the way, how is your company preparing for the Captain America project? We can discuss it for a long time and even move the movie starring Hugh Jackman to the back. This summer, Fox will promote 2 projects. One is naturally the Captain America, which has signed a contract. The other is an independent work of the Wolverine character in the X-Men series, which is also the first step for Fox Film to expand its framework. However, they don't have much confidence in the project itself now. With the idea that Captain America will not lose money, it was put in front and the initial schedule is May. After the Oscars are over, we will arrange a few internal previews. You can invite theater operators to come and have a look. It looks good, Bill McNichol said with a smile. Anyway, the results won't be bad. Lemon clinked his glasses and took a sip. Have you read the publicity plan? The offensive will enter the bombing stage in mid-April, regarding matters related to overseas distribution. Don't worry, everything has been arranged. 62 regions will be screened together. China film will coincide with the May Day holiday. The first week screening scale in each region is guaranteed. The results of major projects are ideal. All this can be smoothly deduced. Lemon nodded and suddenly asked, Wolverine has a solo work. Do you have any other plans? This question is not easy to answer, Bill McNichol said with a smile to avoid it. Sorry, I'm just interested in a certain role. Oh, can we talk about it? Wolverine has been filmed, and Deadpool, who broke the dimensional wall, should also be suitable for being put on the big screen. I'm talking about independent works of characters. I have an idea. How about your company publishing the rights and having Firefly film it? Sorry, I can't make the decision on this matter. I will consider this proposal. Consider it. After saying that, Neil, who didn't know whether Lemon had really thought about it or was just thinking about it, turned around and merged into the crowd. In fact, Lemon is not talking nonsense. In the future, Fox was inspired by the extremely successful development of Wolverine and gradually explored the possibility of processing other characters in the framework of X-Men. The road to adaptation for a superhero with a personality like Deadpool is even more tortuous. After all, if you want to show that mean atmosphere and the idea of shooting a narrated film, the rating restrictions are not something you dare to take risks under normal circumstances. Lemon's move is just to plant a seed inside Fox. If it can succeed, it would be the best. If you can't participate, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's done at the right time, showing that Firefly has a plan and has inspiration for adaptation. What if Fox is tempted one day? It's hard to say. Chapter 880, the 81st Academy Awards. Subscriptions, votes. The driving distance from the Firefly building to the Kodak Theater is not far, and it takes about 40 minutes to get there. Oh, by the way, today is February 23rd, the day of the 81st Academy Awards. To be honest, every time Lemon attends, he feels that it is more magical every year. Of course, the future is not called magic, but called stacking labels. So instead of worrying about it, it is better to pay more attention to the people around him. Lemon finally persuaded Eva to get out of the New Moon crew and temporarily put down her work to accompany him to sit and run with him despite hunger and fatigue. In the car, Eva wore a waisted dark purple tweed skirt and stiletto high heels. Her makeup was also her favorite purple eyeshadow fairy style. It was very different from her lazy look that was not so particular on weekdays. She looked more pleasing to the eye plus sexy. Especially the slender calves were tightly wrapped in black stockings, which made Lemon's thoughts drift too far away, and he didn't pay attention to the red carpet, catwalk, or college selection. Eva noticed the blazing gaze and felt somewhat satisfied. She had dressed up for a long time, so she should have played a role. Apart from other things, when she gradually put her focus on the field of production, she rarely cared about being as exquisite as actors and stars who had to face the camera at any time every day. After all, there was more power behind the scenes and less spotlight. Arriving at the venue, waiting for the notice of the ceremony planner, the nominated crews walked through the red carpet in an orderly manner into the inner auditorium. There were still so many media and the scene was still so lively. After everyone who should enter entered, Lemon greeted a few familiar filmmakers and took Eva to sit in a seat to rest. Such social activities were no longer useful to Lemon. Few senior executives of the studio would come. Maybe it was only when the results were summarized the next day that they knew that a certain movie had won a big award, so they could pay attention to the winning director. After all, there were too many directors who got big projects through the Oscars. The Academy vote could at least guarantee one thing: those who could win the best director would at least have good directing skills and solid basic skills. Therefore, when Lyman was not so enthusiastic, everyone did not dare to disturb him. After all, their identities were different. About half an hour later, Edward Norton, who had finished socializing, sat on his right, looking a little nervous, but also revealing some expectations. The PR team arranged by the agency told him that this time, he was very likely to win the Best Actor Oscar, because his previous Fight Club and Kingdom of China had already earned him a lot of points. In addition, there was a gap between the competing films of Sean Penn's Milk, Brad Pitt's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Frank Langella's Nixon, and Richard Jenkins' The Visitor. If the judges were biased towards politics, Nixon might have an advantage, and his and Sean Penn's more breakthrough performances would be very appealing to the judges. In other words, as long as he didn't do anything weird, and relied solely on his expressiveness, he did have a great chance. His advantage was that District 9 had a better reputation than Milk, and it had been crowned a classic by both media critics and audiences. His weakness was that the box office was too high, which might slightly suppress the impression. The Oscars have been rejecting the theory of performance for a long time, but tonight was destined to be a surprise. After the song and dance show, as usual, some awards that were not so important to movie fans were presented. Among them, after Iron Man won the Best Visual Effects, Scott Ross, who had already won too many honors in the digital field, simply did not come, and asked his deputy to go up to promote the company. Anyway, when Cameron was still there, the digital field often won the Oscar Technical Awards. With so many awards, it is really hard to pay attention to it. It feels like wholesale, either digital field, or industrial light and magic or Weta Digital. During the boring waiting time, the ceremony lasted for more than 20 minutes before people could be slightly excited. When the Best Foreign Language Award was taken away by departures, Takaki Ichiro's excited gesture seemed to have added some seriousness to the 81st Academy Awards. It is still valuable, important, and someone wants to get it. When it was Kate Winslet's turn to take the Best Actress award, Edward Norton, with mixed feelings, didn't know where to put his hands. Lyman shook his head, thinking that his appearance was too different from the face that was constantly arguing over the role during the filming. It seems that some people do not regard acting as the only choice, and they cannot escape the temptation of the Oscar statuette. Then it is easy to understand that Edward is a little uncalm. He is already 39 years old, which is the peak of male actors. Whether it is acting skills or screen charm, if he misses it again, when will he not have regrets? Then, he was boiling. Hearing his name in the envelope, Edward immediately stood up and hugged Lyman tightly with a strong hand. For a while, applause surged and surrounded him on the podium. Yes, Edward successfully won the Best Actor statuette among a group of competitors. In fact, there is no suspense. With the experience of being nominated for Oscar acting awards many times, he got it in the queue, not to mention the great transformation of the central path of District 9 and the contrast of the character image before and after, which are all plus points. It's not just the appearance that has changed, and everyone generally agrees that Edward has shown his strength and endowed the role with extra charm, which won the appreciation of the judges and accepted the honor. At this moment, apart from some polite words, Edward is most grateful to the director Lyman Lust for giving him the opportunity and space to interpret. District 9 is undoubtedly an excellent movie, and he deserves the Best Actor Oscar. But even so, apart from such a small episode that pays off for District 9, Slumdog Millionaire is basically the only one that stands out. Best Cinematography, Best Original Music, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, Best Sound Mixing. Nominated for 8 awards, and won 5 awards, which is enough to show how much the judges like this work that expresses American romance, has a big pattern, European humanistic care, exotic style, and is sharp and thorough in both image and thought. More importantly, the 2008 crisis has not yet dissipated, and everyone also hopes to have such a slightly inspirational theme to boost morale, which undoubtedly further confirms the result that District 9 is a runner-up. However, Oscars never play by the rules. You may think he is praising you, but he may actually be compensating you. You may think he is compensating you, but he really is praising you. Danny Boyle has been in a bad mood for a long time. He thought that the long-awaited little golden man was waving at him, but now, everything has changed. It's all a dream. Winning 5 awards in a row, isn't it a return to the peak? Why is he heading to the bottom of the valley? Chapter 881. It was too sudden. I was not prepared. Please subscribe and vote. On the stage, the guest of honor who was determined by the organizing committee to present the Best Director award was Reese Witherspoon. She was graceful, but the moment she opened the envelope and read out her name, Danny Boyle felt as if all his strength had been drained from his body. Although the selection has not yet ended, for him personally, it is empty and uneasy. He has experienced the glory of train spotting, which was known all over the world, and he has also experienced that he could not surpass his previous achievements no matter what, and was mocked by the industry for losing his talent. He also experienced the frustration of being replaced by the investor after the project was approved. It was not until he filmed Slumdog Millionaire that he found the feeling of being sure that he could shoot well, and that another classic work could be born in his hands. He was very satisfied and enjoyed it very much. However, if he could be recognized by the Oscars, it would be the best golden body creation. However, he saw the younger generation who quickly shone in the film industry stand on the stage. The director circle is actually very small, especially those at the same level know each other more or less. Of course, Danny Boyle also knew Lyman through various channels. After entering the auditorium, he was also worried. After all, the quality and reputation of District 9 were there, and it was impossible to see who would win the grand prize. It was only when his own work won all the awards that he had great hope. Now, the worry has come true. The 2009 Oscars were actually a small year. In the original time and space, the competition was not fierce at all, and Slumdog Millionaire directly achieved a very good record of winning 7 out of 9 nominations. But now, District 9 and Slumdog are competing with each other, and Lyman has been deliberately ignored. It is easy for the judges to have disagreements. At the beginning, $1 Million Baby and No Country for Old Men had already made many judges feel guilty and awarded the grand prize from the sidelines. As the saying goes, 3 times is better than 3. The Oscars certainly do not believe in this, but too many runners-up will definitely make the judges of the Academy feel sympathetic to compensate, which is why many selections later did not have such high gold content. In addition, Lyman's influence is growing. The audience recognizes him, the Coppola family's matchmaking, the public relations team's active contact. The quality of District 9 is qualified for the nomination, and Danny Boyle is not an American director. These factors are the reasons why there was something missing in the past, and now it is on Lyman's side. In fact, as long as the film can be nominated, it has a chance to win the award in theory, and the Oscar Academy judges don't care about being criticized. Some awards are given as if they are a joke. Therefore, after being nominated, the proportion of the film itself is not that high. It depends on the relationship with the judges, sensory impressions, and other very subjective standards. Or let's put it this way, everyone has their own preferences. The judges are also people, and people have preferences. Some people like realistic ones, some people like to expose the bottom of society, and some people like narrative styles that do not follow the rules. Where is the unified standard? Not to mention that some old white men with seriously backward ideas will not vote for non-American filmmakers. What can you do? Another point is that Lyman has never complained in public after running for the award several times. How can such a well-behaved, actually seeing through attitude not add some subjective points? Don't forget, after Trainspotting, Danny Boyle was floating in the sky for a while, which is why his reputation is not as high as many master directors. When Danny Boyle fell into a depressed mood, Spielberg once again read out Lyman's name as the presenter of the Best Picture award. At this moment, it was as if the crossroads of life had turned on a red light for him, stopping Danny Boyle's steps forward, but allowing Lyman, who was waiting on the side, to step over calmly. Best Director and Best Picture. Lyman finally won 2 golden statues that should have been put together at the 81st Academy Awards. Congratulations. Spielberg smiled kindly and handed over the unique trophy. It's hard to say what it feels like. Lemon still feels incredible, but he is still happy to win the award. Since he is here, he must take something away. He can't always be a runner-up. He raised the golden statue, which symbolizes the honor of the Academy, above his head, and the audience applauded. His fans who watched the live broadcast in front of the TV were even more crazy. Even the host of ABC, who was maintaining the situation on the scene, shouted in front of the camera, "It's over. District 9 and director Lemon Lust are the final big winners. He and his work deserve it." On the big screen at the scene, there was a close-up of Lemon's face. His expression was a little strange, since he came on stage. Like joy, like surprise, like excitement. It seems that none of them are. As a director, in addition to hoping to win the support and affirmation of the audience, he once thought about winning the big awards of influential selections such as film festivals. But after really stepping into the world of fame and fortune, those dirty and unfair things seem to have left a few inglorious marks on the awards, making them not so perfect. If the Oscars were not valuable, he might not have participated in such a game long ago. Of course, you can't step on one and praise another. Cannes is actually not much better, but it's just that there is too much warmth for him there, with a home filter, which magnifies the good side. So when such an honor really came to him, he found that he was not so indifferent, as if it had never happened. In the eyes of the fans, Lemon was very stylish, standing steadily on the stage. Although his acceptance speech was a bit routine, praising the entire crew, he was very calm, as if he deserved the little golden man, highlighting a confident and high-spirited person. Only he knew that his body had lost some control and his mind was a little confused. Going backstage, engraving his name, accepting the reporter's long-winded interview, but also witnessed everything tonight. After completing the process, Thomas was the first one among the familiar people to rush up and hug Lemon. This cameraman who once had a dream of making movies and was not very concerned about other jobs has become more mature along the way, but he was able to step into the threshold of the industry because of Lemon. So Lemon's scenery is his scenery, excited JPG. Ryan didn't come, and Eva followed closely behind. She wanted to be the first to hug, but she couldn't run faster than Thomas, who knew that such a big man was so excited, and she was wearing high heels, so she had to be careful if she wanted to walk faster. Next to him, there was Edward Norton, who also took away the highest award in the actor category, top, who was happy for Lemon and the crew's behind the scenes workers. Their joy also set off Danny Boyle's fatigue. After the award ceremony, the moment he walked out of the venue, looking back at the unattainable podium, the director shook his head and sighed. "I thought it would be a wonderful night, but in the end, all the beauty belonged to others." But, without losers, where would the victory come from? Losing is losing, although it is a bit unwilling. After all, how many movies can he support himself at his age? The workload on the set is very large, especially unfriendly to people with aging bodies. At a distance, Danny Boyle saw Lemon. As a senior, rationally, he should offer congratulations like Spielberg and be more graceful, but he didn't want to go over. Maybe the ocean of joy cannot accommodate a person who lacks interest and has the wrong style, but it may also be that his personality is not that good. Chapter 880 to the little golden man is still useful. 3 wins out of 4 nominations. District 9 made it to the final. Edward Norton wins Best Actor, an alternative actor's road to fame. Lyman Lust finally wins the Oscar, while Danny Boyle and David Fincher return with regret. After the 81st Academy Awards, the feast of North American film masterpieces in 2008 has come to an end. From the next day, various news that have been flooding the screen have gradually fomented the impact of Lemon and District 9 on fans everywhere. The reflection is that even many viewers who don't pay much attention to the director can see Lemon Lust being mentioned again and again on the homepages of major news media and community websites such as Yahoo, and then remember his achievements, his works, and even his personal life. Judging from public opinion, except for a small number of die-hard fans who are injustice for the other directors who lost the nomination, most fans still quite approve of the awarding of several major awards at this Oscars. There is no way. Lemon's film themes are varied, and the output is high and the level is stable. He has never made a big bad movie with poor performance and reputation, which is quite popular. What's more, District 9 is so unusual. It's rare for a sci-fi movie about an alien race to have such depth. Fans who like Lemon's works are so happy that they actually witnessed this moment that went into film history. As early as several years ago, people kept complaining that the Oscars owed Lemon a director statuette. The embarrassment of being a runner-up was even more unacceptable to movie fans. Until now, it suddenly topped the list. Besides being shocking, it was more of a joy to be witnessed. The Hollywood Observer has specially opened a column to discuss this. Over the years, Kubrick passed away, Francis Coppola semi-retired, Martin Scorsese finally won the director's golden statue with The Departed, but Woody Allen has always been immersed in his own world, stubborn and conservative. Spielberg is called a director, but now he can't shoot a movie a year, but he is producing more and more works, more like a producer. Lucas has also become a businessman, running around for the hype of Star Wars, involving clothing, electrical appliances, real estate and other fields, but forgetting movies. Ridley Scott is seeking transformation, but it seems that he has not found the direction yet. Zemeckis is obsessed with live action animation and there is no possibility of trying other ways. The tyrant Cameron may still be diving, shooting a movie, and then being silent for several years. Whether you admit it or not, like it or not, this group of excellent directors from the 1950s to the 1970s are increasingly lacking in momentum, and the occasional brilliance is more and more against the background of a new group of directors dominating the screen. Lemon last, Peter Jackson, Michael Bay, David Yates, Christopher Nolan, and they will also become part of the growing memory of young audiences. More and more fresh blood is being injected, and more unfamiliar faces will take the stage. Let's keep looking forward. Hollywood should enter a new chapter, which is what the Observer wants to tell. After all, Hollywood cannot remain unchanged forever, just like those popular movie stars in the past who retired one after another, and soon there were more popular stars standing in high positions. In the Firefly building, Lemon, who was in the limelight, did not feel that his life had changed much. After Oscar night, sleep, breakfast, work, as usual. It only took a little time to put the little golden man in the exhibition room on the second floor of the main building of the manor, and next to it was the Cannes Golden Palm. The rest, what to do, is still what to do. Lyman was a little happy when he learned that District 9 won the best film. He has already started to calculate how to use the influence of the Oscars to reap a wave of copyright dividends. It is very realistic and the most important thing to do. Strike while the iron is hot. A few days later, Lionsgate notified Firefly to settle the cooperation affairs because the Museum 2, which has been screened for 6 weeks, is about to enter the stage of being removed from the screen. In the conference room of Lionsgate Films, Big Boss Gustav and CEO John Felmer did not show up, and another executive was responsible for receiving Lemon. The revenue from the settlement this time is the first batch of overseas revenue of the Museum 2, as well as all the market benefits of the previously released I'm a Hero and The Orphanage in the second half of 2008. The majority of the revenue is concentrated in Europe, England, Germany, France, Austria, and Asia, Japan and South Korea. For the Museum 2, North America has already earned $177 million, and overseas box office results of $245 million. Excluding the theater and other miscellaneous expenses and Lionsgate's distribution commission, Firefly has received $110.25 million in overseas alone. In addition, the overseas agency operations of the projects I'm a Hero and Orphanage only made a little money from the broadcasting rights and DVDs, and the rest were just small changes, and the audience didn't buy them. The quarterly DVD sales exceeded 450,000 sets, and the rental turnover was 140,000 times, and the two parts added up to a total of $6.405 million, minus the distribution channels and Lionsgate's profit. In other words, this time, Lemon only took away a part of the long-term accumulation of so many cooperative projects, $116.65 million. After deducting the bonuses distributed to the main creators, producers, and the Blue Butterfly distribution team, there was still $108.75 million left, and the company's capital chain was stabilized again. In the future, the revenue of Museum 2 will be about 187 million, minus the project cost of 210 million, which is just a drop in the bucket. Just like that, after Lemon left with the eyes of the Lionsgate executives looking at the god of wealth, not long after, director Zack came to see him. A few days ago, this guy was preparing for I'm Legend. Because it is a one-man show, he also had to create a sense of doomsday emptiness. He spent every day in the digital field to communicate with them about the image formation. Will Smith, who was hired at a high price, also entered the role experience and shaping stage in advance. In addition, he had to communicate with the New York government to block the Central Viaduct, several blocks of 5th Street, and Washington Square for filming permits, which was also very troublesome, so the movie has not officially started. But at this time, Watchmen was scheduled for early March, and Zack Snyder had to help promote it, run announcements or roadshows in various places. In short, he had to temporarily leave the crew and take 2 weeks off. Of course, Lemon would not stop this. After all, there was still plenty of time for the shooting of I'm Legend. Even without Zack Snyder, the preparations could still be carried out. Lemon just asked curiously, "Have you seen the finished film?" "I have. The length of the feature film is at least 162 minutes. Zack Snyder felt a headache when he thought of this. "I have tried to reduce it as much as possible, but I still deleted half an hour of footage." Lemon said nothing more. There was no need to dwell on the issue of who was short-sighted in this movie. It could only be said that the cooperation was not very good. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 883 Dilemma. Watchmen is about to meet the audience. Even though this play has been full of twists and turns since its preparation, it makes people lose confidence. Inside the Warner building, a group of executives sat there, not very excited. This play was not confirmed to be a failure until after it was released. In fact, the clues can be seen from the publicity. You know, the scale of publicity for this film is not even comparable to the Harry Potter series, not to mention Butterfly Begins. Warner spent less than $23 million conservatively on the early publicity, which shows that their internal risk assessment level for the project is not low. If they are really optimistic, they will never be so stingy. In other words, Warner certainly hopes that Watchmen can make money, but it is hard to be optimistic that it can make a lot of money and attract a lot of money, so the financial control is a little strict. The cinema chain has arranged 3,611 theaters and has avoided the fiercely competitive summer season. What we need to do now is to stimulate the fans' and audience's desire to watch movies. The executive in charge of liaison with the cinema chain handed the details of the already decided schedule to everyone. During the same schedule, there are no movies that need much attention. Taken and Slumdog Millionaire are only taking in $6 or $7 million a week now. The overall screening situation is going downhill. If it performs well, the first championship should be no problem. The follow-up will be difficult. Comic fans are looking forward to it, but passers-by are not. As long as the first week's results are good, it will attract subsequent audiences who are waiting and watching for word of mouth to come in. How to maintain the reputation? Someone said disappointingly. The person who just said this spread his hands and hesitated. Most of the scenes in the original work have been restored. Fans who have read the comics may like it. We can guide them through this point and accumulate early word of mouth. How is the distribution of individual comics? More than 20,000 copies have been distributed. In fact, Warner has also made a lot of efforts to distribute the film, but it is still not so optimistic about the market. Watchmen is too difficult to adapt. The length and content are both big problems. However, before the release, fans are still quite active and have initially formed the main force of ticket purchasers. That is, audiences who have channels to understand the original work of the project in the past or recently, and there are very few women. The advanced tickets sold very well. Although the money-making power of special effects films is gradually sluggish, masterpieces with these 3 points are still different. First of all, the basic market. Watchmen was rated as 100 greatest novels in history by Time magazine and won the Hugo Award. Secondly, they are related to each other. After the novel author Alan Moore's V for Vendetta was adapted into a movie by the Wachowski brothers, the box office and word of mouth were not bad, and it was highly sought after by film critics. Finally, whether it is another masterpiece of Warner Brothers is The Dark Knight that analyzes the human nature of superheroes, The Secret Diversion, or the released trailer, the pictures and visual effects injected by Zack into the work are also quite gorgeous, refreshing. On the evening of March 5th, at the door of middle-class community, 16 or 17-year-old Boris was anxiously waiting for something until a familiar face ran from the aisle. He couldn't help complaining. "We agreed to meet at 7 o'clock. Why are you late?" "You know, I have to clean up the kitchen after dinner and throw away the garbage." Tor panted and explained a few words. "Forget it, let's go. Don't miss the movie." Tori nodded, but he was not as excited as his good friend Boris. Unlike Boris, who is a DC fan, he doesn't like to read comics, but he still watches movies often. Recently, the most popular and eye-catching movie on the market is undoubtedly Watchmen, so the two of them also made an appointment to go to the cinema together. The young man ran all the way, and the physical strength was very abundant. After the two went to the cinema they often went to, the long queue at the ticket window made Boris complain a few times. He was very worried that he would have to wait for so many days and end up delaying it for another day. Fortunately, after rushing, the two still entered the theater, but the seats were not very good. The chattering and the good atmosphere with almost no empty seats also made Boris feel excited. Halfway through the movie, when he came to his senses and wanted to find someone to share his joy, Tori had fallen asleep without knowing when. To be honest, Watchmen is very unfriendly to viewers who don't read the original comics in advance. They can't even figure out the relationship between the characters and what's going to happen. Why? There is too much information, and it's not handled in detail at all because the length is there. Like Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, even if you don't know the background in advance, it's a visual enjoyment to treat it as a special effects movie, so these two movies have attracted a large number of non-Marvel fans to support them. The same is true for Batman. Nolan's deconstruction makes it okay for people to treat it as a crime movie. In this regard, Watchmen did not do well. The threshold is too high. In today's highly entertaining world, do you still have to understand the background of the story before watching a movie? WHWT. On the way back, it was Tor who complained. Compared with Boris, who was immersed in it, constantly comparing memories, and was full of satisfaction, Tor was for the sake of his good friend, and he resisted leaving halfway, and held on to the end, although he accidentally fell asleep in the middle. "I'm so confused. What on earth is Watchmen trying to say? There's not even an introduction." Tor shouted, "Is this a superhero movie? Why are there so many dialogues? They're always talking about something mysterious and confusing. Who's on whose side? You didn't pay attention to the nuclear threat, high pressure, and supervision of power. Humph, it's not well made anyway. It's much worse than Iron Man. You don't understand. I won't talk to you anymore." Hearing that his beloved work was classified as worse than a traditional cool movie by a good friend, Boris couldn't hold back his emotions, especially after he finished watching it. He had already regarded this movie as a bible. And this is also a microcosm of Watchmen, that is, the affirmation and praise of the original fans, and the polarization of the comments of passers-by who have no good feelings, which quickly put the work in an awkward situation of ice and fire. Those who love it to death. And those who don't love it will be chased and scolded by some extreme fans, even if they comment objectively, which further intensifies this opposition. Because from the perspective of ordinary audiences, it is considered to be long, dull, and incomprehensible. The whole movie is full of flashbacks, which makes people feel confused. Can you say that the evaluation is wrong? In the absence of major events to promote the plot, how to grab the audience's attention and force them to accept the appearance of a large number of superheroes in the next 20 minutes? You know, the names of these superheroes are not as good as Superman and Batman. DC fans may not know them. You can't just blow Night Owl, Silk Ghost, Comedian, Rorschach, and Doctor For a movie, especially a movie for the general public, some audiences don't understand their stories. Because the heroes in Watchmen tend to be stereotyped, it is easy to lose focus. I don't know who to focus on, and I can't tell the main from the secondary, and then confuse the direction of the plot. This is the defect of Watchmen. If we look into it more carefully, the use of flashbacks in the film will make the loss of focus more serious. Although this has no effect on fans, it cannot be regarded as nothing. Director Zack Snyder has restored the comics to a great extent, and this approach is of course deeply loved by the original fans, just like seeing their favorite thing being reproduced and promoted to the world. But the carnival of a small number of people does not need to force others to agree. What is honey to others is poison to me. This can summarize the embarrassment of Watchmen. Chapter 884. There is a limit to comic fans. Please subscribe and vote. 2009. Watchmen was released in 3,611 theaters. Despite the pressure of serious word-of-mouth polarization, it took in $55.7 million in its first week and topped the weekly chart. If we ignore the fact that the film earned $25 million on the first day, this figure includes $4.6 million from the midnight show on Thursday, $18 million on Saturday, a 16% drop, and another 41% drop on Sunday, earning only $12.7 million. It is still good. What does it mean? The collapse trend is too obvious. Because there are very few first week box office curves that meet the investment share that fall so fast. If the starting point is low, it would be fine. It is clear that the first day can pass the 20 million mark, but it fell so much on Saturday and Sunday. Of course, this week's movie market has risen by 18% compared with the same period of the same period, driven by Watchmen, but the unfriendly attitude towards passers-by has been thoroughly spread. All the major portals have been in a mess, with fans attacking each other, and fans of masterpieces and fans of bad movies fighting each other, trying to make a good argument for Watchmen, but this actually has a very weak effect on the box office. Because fans who want to watch this movie will come to support it without any hype, but the energy of comic fans is so small. It must be admitted that comics have always been a very niche circle. When the energy of this part of people is almost consumed, can we still expect the audience who are watching from the sidelines to waste money and find trouble after understanding the common evaluations of boring and confusing? That doesn't make sense. In addition, when the first week results came out, it was still very demoralizing. Seeing that none of the forecasting agencies were optimistic about Watchmen recovering its costs, the box office could not be conjured up out of thin air without the support of the audience in the situation of an avalanche. Warner can only take measures again to reduce expenditures as much as possible and lie down and admit defeat. With over 180 million RMB invested in investment and publicity, it would be wise for a wise man to admit defeat. However, this caused Zack Snyder and the main creators of the crew to suffer. Why? They were all on the road shows, but the supplies from the rear were cut off. What's the point of playing? In addition, the project failed, so how could they be in a good mood? That night, Warner also discussed quickly and made some choices. According to real-time sampling surveys, the screening situation of Watchmen is not ideal, and the subsequent trend is even more difficult. It is also very difficult to rely on overseas regions, because overseas audiences lack channels to understand background information, and have a weaker recognition basis than domestic movie fans, so they cannot be relied on. Therefore, a senior executive of Warner's distribution department waved his hand and said, instead of increasing the cost of publicity, which is a heavier burden, I think we can give up the box office market. Try to preserve the value of the copyright, spend more time guiding the basic plate of the film, and hold the market of core fans. Now among this part of the audience, there are also people who talk about the perfection of the plot. Many classic scenes in the comics were not shot. I suggest that the 186-minute director's cut and the original 215-minute cut can be released. Admitting that it is due to the influence of the miscalculation of the length of the theater scheduling, at least the offline market can be expanded, and the losses can be made up. After all, we can't let the theater show a movie of more than 3 hours, which is even more of a disaster. Since Watchmen has already failed, but there is still an excellent side of word of mouth, we should try to grasp it. The coordination effect is always more effective than other directions. The distribution executive pointed to the research and analysis report, emphasizing the fact that most comic fans still support Watchmen. Because this movie is indeed not bad, it's just that the amount of information is a bit too much, and the degree of restoration is still guaranteed. No matter what, it's a narrow path, not that we have lost the path ourselves. Will the failure of active guidance be detrimental to the Warner label? Someone asked tactfully, but this is no longer the point. Even if we don't say so, they have all seen a joke. I think this subject is not suitable for theatrical distribution. It lacks an audience base and is difficult to schedule. The theaters are not easy to cooperate at all. Warner CEO Kevin Tsujihara listened carefully to the analysis of his subordinates and thought about it for a long time. He still made a decision. It's settled. 3 versions will be released in the home entertainment market, and let the audience evaluate it themselves. Even if the effect is not good, we will not get worse results. But if this kind of guidance is good, we can always make up for it. In the original Time and Space, it was really this guy who pushed this matter forward. To be honest, admitting that Warner's big scissors have differences with Zack Snyder is actually quite embarrassing, and it will definitely lead to a negative image. But if the final cut is not released, and the details are not filled in, who knows whether the threshold for watching this movie has actually been lowered? It is also because of this that the sales of the theater version of Watchmen DVD are not as high as the final cut, and the latter once became the sales champion in the home entertainment market. You know, this set of discs containing 3 versions and shooting highlights is priced at $43.87 and then sold more than 2.1 million sets with a net profit of $61.72 million. Of course, the box office gap of Watchmen is too large and it is still a loss, but the loss is not as high as expected. This is why Warner's subsequent DC planned projects continue to hire Zack Snyder for a large sum of money, because Warner did not put too much responsibility for the failure of Watchmen on him, and felt that Zack Snyder's directing style is still very suitable for DC. In the second week, after the overturn of Watchmen, Disney's new comeback film Earth Dad also failed to perform as expected. Box office results. This is a repackaged version of the 1975 classic film The Adventures of Mount Devil, starring Dwayne Johnson and Huang Shengyi. Before the release, Disney production executives claimed that they would create a trilogy, but the film was quite disappointing. The opening scale of 3,187 theaters only earned $25 million. However, in the worst schedule, Earth Baby still defeated last week's champion Watchmen. In fact, there is no special reason. The obscure plot and difficult character relationships of Watchmen caused the weekly box office to plummet by 66% again. It only earned $18.07 million in the 3 days of the next weekend. After 10 days of screening, the cumulative North American box office was $86.01 million. Warner is really miserable. If you don't count, you won't know. In the past 3 months, Warner has lost 2 blockbusters with production costs of over $100 million, Ironheart and Watchmen. Even major media reporters are surprised that Warner has such a bad start this year, because Warner still occupied the top 3 in market share in previous years. How come it suddenly couldn't find the rhythm of film production since the second half of 2008? And I haven't heard that the management is in disarray or that there are problems with the capital chain. The stock market crash did have an impact, but it was still acceptable to Warner. So it seems that the market vision is simply not good enough, and it is hard to bet on anything. Sometimes, it is really hard to explain why a studio is in a trough. Chapter 885 The Art Core is exerting its strength. Please subscribe and vote. After Zack Snyder got out of the work of platform promotion, he was also very depressed. Even some true fans pushed Watchmen to the altar, which did not make him very happy. He should be happy to be affirmed, but the problem is that this movie failed. There are more criticisms than praises. We can't just ignore it and immerse ourselves in vanity. Of course, this emotion did not exist for long. The more setbacks he suffered, the more Zack Snyder wanted to seize the time to devote himself to the crew of I'm Legend and put aside those troubles. After shooting commercials for so many years, he finally squeezed into the film industry. Zack Snyder is still quite tenacious. So after communicating with Warner, he called Lyman again. He didn't even go to the Firefly building to sit down. He contacted the team and ran to New York to contact the location matters. After this matter was handled, I'm Legend would be able to start filming. On the other hand, the three Mexican heroes were not idle either. This time, the three of them pushed a project together. Among them, Top served as producer and art director, Alejandro served as producer and screenwriter, Alfonso served as chief producer, and the director was a local middle-aged man named Rodrigo Garcia in Mexico. The cause of the incident was that Alejandro took a fancy to a script, but the draft of the script was handed to him by a local filmmaker who came to attract investment. As a result, he liked it very much after reading it and discussed it with the remaining two people. Anyway, they had nothing to do, so they got together, which could be regarded as providing some assistance to Mexican filmmakers going abroad. When the project was placed on Lemon's desk, he also took a closer look. The name of the script was Love Is Around You, which was a typical literary award-winning theme. It tells the story of three women of different ages and some conflicts and emotional entanglements caused by family upbringing. The shooting budget was about $40 million. The reason for the slightly higher price was that Naomi Watts accidentally saw the script and felt that there was room for performance and she could win awards and increase her value. In addition, director Rodrigo himself also wanted to work with the actress. Therefore, even if Naomi takes a pay cut, she still has to pay $6.5 million in salary for the main creative expenses. But it doesn't matter. The story of this theme is indeed of high quality. If it is well filmed, it will be guaranteed by the three great Mexicans. At least the reputation and quality will not fall. As I said before, the studio needs works with depth to enhance the brand image. Therefore, Love Is Always There officially became the fifth film in Firefly's 2009 production plan. Including Captain America and Thor, there are 7 film projects. In mid-March, when the North American film market still maintained a fairly good increase in the same period, but Warner was still the unlucky one, Sofia Coppola returned from a walk and appeared in the office of Lemon Firefly Pictures. How was your recent time? Did you have a good trip? Assistant Metz brought coffee to the two of them, and Lemon, who was sitting behind the boss chair, stood up and walked over to greet Sophia. I walked around half of France, and it was actually quite comfortable. I was so relaxed that I didn't think about anything. I went wherever I wanted to go, just for filming. Sophia chatted for a while, and she was in a good mood. She was also interested in the script that Lemon mentioned. As a director, she was tired of filming and resisted, but she couldn't do without the motivation added by the desire to create. Then you take a look first. Lemon took out a new project that had been prepared long ago from the drawer and handed it to the other party. This was actually a very lifelike story selected and polished by the screenwriter department. After market approval, it was decided that it was very promising. Sophia sat on the sofa and flipped through it quietly. In order to ease the silence in the office, Lemon took the initiative to introduce. As a director, I personally think this is a theme that attaches great importance to rhythm and atmosphere. An ordinary and even unsocial man has been hiding in his mother's comfort zone for more than 40 years. Later, he was dragged by his mother to a blind date and met a woman who was a little depressed, withdrawn, and also not good at talking. The two met, got to know each other, and finally returned to the ordinary. This story is very similar to an Icelandic movie, The Spring of a Warm Man, also known as The Mountain of Virgins, which is a healing masterpiece that suddenly became popular in 2015. In fact, as long as the screenwriter department of Firefly finds a good script, it will be specially marked and sent to Lemon. This story came about in this way. The only change is that after it was confirmed that the project could be established, it was revised again by the screenwriter department. According to the memory of The Spring of a Warm Man, under the same theme direction, the characters and scenes were streamlined to make it fit. Because the biggest advantage of that Icelandic movie is that the early shots exude a chill and alienated temperament. The cold mood and this lonely story complement each other, but in the second half it gradually becomes brighter, as if the ice melts, which is a great contrast. To be more thorough, it can be said that older shots and scenes are reflections of the protagonists, an older single introverted man, psychological map. And this is why, after reading the script, The first director Lemon thought of was Sophia, because she is good at using light and camera angles to tell the inner world of the character, which is a good match. So when Sophia carefully put away the script and prepared to study it carefully, Lemon knew that he had captured the heart of this literary young woman again. "Do you want to take over? I like this clean story," Sophia affirmed generously. "Do you have a certain outline of the character image?" Lemon asked again. "It's a bit vague. I recommend you a male actor, Mark Ruffalo. Take a look," Sophia replied. "Don't worry, when you meet him, you will understand why I say that." Lemon seemed very confident. Apart from anything else, he has a good eye for casting. Although Mark Ruffalo is now popular with The Incredible Hulk and has been stereotyped by some fans because of the role of the Hulk, his temperament and age are suitable for playing an introverted warm man. More importantly, he is not handsome, and the sense of singleness comes out immediately. "I will ask him to talk." Lemon nodded and said to Sophia, "I will formulate the specific director contract in a few days. If the crew is preparing, you should pay more attention to it." "Well, thank you, Lemon." The shooting budget of The Spring of Warm Man is about $35 million, and Sophia's personal salary is $8 million. It is another medium to low level project that goes through the film festival route. To be honest, with the support of the Coppola family, Lemon feels that this film has more value than the project handed over by the three Mexican masters. After all, their family has been in Hollywood for so many years, and their connections and influence are not at the same level, so Firefly can worry less. As for Mark Ruffalo, it is purely a matter of giving him a push, winning some awards, and raising his profile, which is more realistic. Anyway, the better his reputation in the circle, the better it is for Marvel. Chapter 886. Still just a little flame. Please subscribe, vote. Burbank, Columbia Pictures. Chief, the internal preview held by Marvel yesterday received a very good response. As the president of the distribution department, Gareth Antoinette is of course very concerned about the upcoming projects. After all, the summer season is about to begin, and Fox has gradually started to warm up for Captain America. Thor, which is scheduled for July, will naturally have to see how the two companies' actions work in advance. How are the theaters arranged? Carlos raised his eyebrows. Will the thriller confirmed by Sony Classics be affected? The results of Iron Man and The Incredible Hulk are there, and everyone wants to bet on the financial prospects of Captain America. If nothing unexpected happens, the opening scale will not be less than 3,700 theaters. As for Bewitched, the audience is different, so the impact will not be too great. Sony Classics plays a similar role to Searchlight in the entire Sony Media Group system as Fox, and also focuses on discovering art films or low-cost themes. Bewitched is such a product. But then again, the competition for this year's summer season is still very fierce. In early May, there are Captain America, Star Trek, and Angels and Demons. In June, there are Terminator 2018, Up, and Fallen Continent. In July, there are Ice Age 3, Thor, Transformers 2, and Harry Potter 6. Just from this list, you can tell what kind of box office carnival it is. The only uncertainty is who will be a big success, and who will not meet expectations. After all, the audience's mind is sometimes easy to guess, and sometimes it is impossible to figure it out. But for movie fans, this is undoubtedly a summer vacation worth looking forward to. The quality of the film source has improved, and it must be friendly to the audience. Has the choice become wider? In April, it was the time for Fast and Furious 4 to give Universal a surprise. This once abandoned series, after Vin Diesel brought in the sponsor to start it, the third spin-off Tokyo Drift was just average, so no one thought it would suddenly explode in the fourth part. The box office revenue of $72.5 million in the first weekend of its release has set a new weekly box office record for new films released in April. The previous record holder was Anger Management, released in April 2003, with $42.2 million. It has also set a new weekly box office record for car-themed movies. The previous record holder was Cars, released in 2006. It has also set a new weekly box office record for Universal Pictures, which was previously held by The Lost World, Jurassic Park, released in 1997. All of the above are enough to show that Universal has inexplicably picked up a gold mine. They even went to the field to investigate why Fast and Furious 4 could achieve such a result. As a result, they found that most of the audience watching the film were young fans under the age of 25, accounting for 75% of the audience, of which 45% were women. What's more interesting is that more or less people in this film have come into contact with the DVDs of the first 3 films or have accidentally watched them on TV, and they are very excited about the racing scenes in them. How to say it, there is a sense of absurdity that the seeds sown casually have borne fruit, because it is not difficult to deduce from it that the reason why the 4th part has a larger audience is that the copyright of the series has been promoted to the home entertainment market and has accumulated a certain number of fans, which has produced a qualitative change. This is like a novel that has always been mediocre and suddenly became popular after a few years. It is due to uncontrollable audience factors. Of course, Fast and Furious is starting to attract money, but Universal's conservatism makes it impossible for people to participate, so Lyman has never paid attention to this series. Big studios rarely transfer copyrights. Firefly has passed the time of working to save capital. In fact, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the box office market is so big that no one can eat all the profits. Why bother to think about it everywhere? Moreover, paying too much attention to it can easily make people disloyal, and the traces are too heavy. Instead of thinking about those things, it is better to think more about how to hollow out DC, integrate the best comic IP resources, and open up the comic universe. After all, Lyman knows how fucked up Warner's management is. For the DC department, not only is there a mother-in-law in charge, but even the mother-in-law's mother has to intervene. All kinds of laymen lead the experts. This is why Lyman always insists on separating Marvel Studios from other companies to maintain the independence of its production. There is no other reason. The word power. If this is not done, Kevin Feige will inevitably be restricted because the veterans of Marvel Entertainment and the existing company management system will watch Marvel Studios stand apart. Anyway, Lyman does not want to see a case like Watchmen appear in Marvel. With an expenditure of nearly $190 million, North America barely broke $100 million, and overseas due to the lack of fan base, the harvest was even more dismal, only taking more than $74 million box office, and finally relying on 3 edited versions of jokes to recover. It's simply in the conference room. Lyman sat in the first seat and was making the final plans for the summer war. Everyone, Captain America is scheduled to be released on May 1st. The biggest competitor during this period should be Star Trek, which will be released on May 8th. However, whether it can stand firm under the impact of the latter is not the focus of our concern. If it is not strong enough, the opening is not eye-catching enough, and the momentum is not created, it will be useless. Our current goal is to implement the publicity plan well. When Lyman took out the publicity and promotion activities connected with Fox and turned on the projection screen for detailed display, whether it was Marvel veterans or Marvel Studios Kevin Feige and other senior management, as well as the core of the distribution team put together by Lyman, they could not hold back their emotions and exchanged excited glances. There is no way such a huge profit chain from box office to peripherals and then to offline is integrated step by by them. There is money, and of course there is motivation. Generally speaking, there are 3 directions. The first is the offline mode, such as the main creators roadshow, talk show, radio, hard advertising, posters, etc. The second is the cooperation of various partners to help promote and expand the exposure to users. This time, Pepsi has also joined the camp. They will launch a cola with Captain America element at the end of April. The third is the support of online press releases, video clips and embedded advertisements such as Marvel Community, Amazon, and YouTube. These marketing, advertising space and other publicity expenses, excluding the expenditure of cooperation, Man Media will account for half of the film cost, which means that the pre-promotion cost will be around $70 million. To be honest, Lyman still felt a little bit painful after throwing out this money, but because the contract with the channel dealers stipulates that the scale of publicity cannot be less than half of the total expenditure, otherwise they will not spend money and resources to cooperate in hyping this movie. In fact, Lemon himself still has a psychological expectation, because Captain America has reduced some logical and refreshing flaws, such as leading the team to charge, and putting his own brothers, and reducing the abuse of patriotic feelings, and filling some gaps. But in terms of plot fluency, audience appeal and character creation, it is definitely far behind Iron Man. At best, the war scenes are not trivial, and look like playing house. At least the Russell brothers are more than one level better than the original director in terms of large-scale scene scheduling, and the picture layering is richer, so it will not become an anti-German drama once it involves military operations. Not to mention that it is as real as Black Hawk Down. At least it is not the awkward rush of Captain America pretending to be alone without the camera setting off. However, in Lemon's view, Captain America 1 has a natural threshold in plot conflict because it needs to be paved, and it is not like Tony Stark's transformation is so big, from a playboy to taking responsibility, which makes the audience very impressed. It's like the latter reached the Civil War event, and the sense of drama came out naturally. In this way, we know how much Marvel has paved for linkage, and which plot segment has more dramatic conflicts. Don't they know? But it is to reasonably introduce the characters, increase the risk and lower the upper limit. In short, don't rush. This is the lesson Marvel has learned from DC. Chapter 887 Preparation before the prize draw. Please subscribe and vote. Gray, Captain America is coming out soon. Do you want to go watch it together? What's so good about Captain America? I'm more looking forward to Transformers 2. Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, the click 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 transformations, that's so cool. In a middle school in New York, during the break, the boys gathered together to discuss their holiday activities, and watching movies has always been a must-see during the summer vacation. If you ask me, we should watch Captain America and Transformers, and there's no conflict. By the way, have you seen the trailer for Captain America? It's just like something out of a comic book. Really? I didn't watch TV yesterday. Levy, can you tell me more about it? Another interested 8th grader came over. That round shield can be used to stun the enemy when advancing, and can be used to block gunfire and bullets when retreating. But it suddenly disappeared during the fighting, just for a short while. It sounds good. I'll go with you guys during the holiday. Levy, who was just enthusiastically popularizing science, yawned in a dilemma. I just don't know if it's easy to get tickets. The last time I watched Iron Man at noon, I didn't get a ticket, and I had to wait in line for the next show. The publicity campaign was very effective. It seemed that in just a few days, many eye-catching places were hung with huge posters of Captain America. On the poster, Chris Evans was wearing a star-spangled military uniform, holding a round shield and standing sideways. The muscle lines under the tights were also deliberately highlighted, and he was tough and handsome. The market was finally paved with the two commercial works Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, which finally made young people pay more attention to the Marvel brand. The voice gradually increased, and it quickly created a good impact in a short period of time. At the end of April, Chris Evans was a guest on the Conan show, and even set the highest ratings in the same time slot. Compared to Robert Downey Jr., Chris is still more talkative, and can make fun of himself. When the host Conan Christopher O'Brien talked about how he was selected, he said humorously, "I didn't have any movies to shoot at that time. One day, my agent told me, hey, director last wants you to audition, you must grab it." When I finally accepted the news and went there to see it, I thought, is this a big director making fun of me? There is no one in the audition room. Could it be that the agent made a fool of himself? Chris spread his hands and laughed with the host. Really, there was no one there, not even any actors I was familiar with. I didn't know what to do at the time. I didn't even dare to sit down, for fear of making a fool of myself. You know, I had never met such a big director before, so I must have been a little nervous, afraid of lowering my impression of him. Haha. Conan laughed. Then what happened next? What do you think of Lemon? Do you like him? Later it was just a normal audition. They asked me to act out a scene to the air according to the script. However, his personality was different from what I imagined. As everyone knows, he rarely accepts interviews or appears in public, so I thought he would be cold or have a weird personality, but no, this is just my personal stereotype. He is not that kind of person at all. Then what kind of personality does he have? Conan took the initiative to speak. I feel comfortable with him. Sometimes when he comes to visit us, he will chat with us actors. He doesn't like to lose his temper. I have hardly seen him get angry on the set. By the way, is your play going to be released soon? What do you think of it? I was quite tired when I was shooting, but I think it is worth it. This role should be the best I have ever played. Are you saying that Captain America will become your label? The label is too much. I just think I will enjoy this process. The director, the photographer, everyone is working hard for this play. Do you think it will be successful? You know, The Watchmen that was praised to the sky not long ago made Warner lose more than 90 million, and the audience didn't buy it. In fact, it didn't lose that much, but on paper, the gap is indeed quite large. After all, copyright operation takes time, which is also a cost. If you ask me, it will be successful. Chris put away his smile and said with some determination, "Then I wish you all the best, Chris, and welcome to be my guest." On the evening of April 30th, Lyman, who was being talked about by Chris Evans, was gathering with Lyman and others at the Chinese theater. The premiere had been scheduled long ago, and the people from Fox had also cooperated to invite some important guests to create a star-studded atmosphere. After communicating with the manager of the theater, a red carpet was laid out in advance, and the invited media reporters took their seats one after another, which naturally attracted the arrival of the fan group. In fact, from the age of these people, it can be seen that Marvel is a very young brand, and it is difficult to attract audiences over 30 or 40 years old, because the more mature the age, the harder it is to watch superhero movies. Except for Nolan's The Dark Knight, which once captured a high proportion of adult fans, other works, including the most popular and highest grossing superhero series Spider-Man trilogy, did not do so. It's normal for people to not like fantasy when they are old. Miracles like Twilight, mature women are also very supportive. If they can appear frequently, they will not surprise other Hollywood practitioners. The road was soon surrounded by people on both sides. The enthusiasm that belongs only to teenagers has been rising since the moment their favorite movie stars appeared calmly on the red carpet. Looking at this scene, Lyman was somewhat pleased with himself, but he also remained vigilant at all times. He quickly pulled Lyman to remind him again. Amazon, Hasbro and other channel platforms remind them to pay attention to the distribution of goods, so as not to be blocked in the delivery link. I have communicated with them several times. The first batch of derivative products reserved by the manufacturer has 1.4 million pieces. Even if it sells better than Iron Man, it can last for 4 weeks. We are well prepared. The current peripheral market is like a haystack. It all depends on how much influence the film can create, thereby increasing the fans' desire to buy. Moreover, for Lyman, whether Marvel can rely on the control of quality and details in the first phase to gather more resources and continue to put pressure on Sony is also very critical. Spider-Man has also taken many detours. If he can be included in the system as soon as possible, he can make a guest appearance earlier. That kind of blessing is also comprehensive. After all, fans say that Spider-Man is the best in Marvel, and it's not nonsense. Just looking at the first level derivatives, Lyman vaguely remembers that Spider-Man alone had a sales benefit of $2 billion more than the entire Marvel 16 years ago. This is all data. Peter Parker's template hero is like the fantasy in the hearts of teenagers, and he is much more down to earth than Captain America. Chapter 888, Captain America, please subscribe and vote. There were too many people, and their excitement was even stronger than that of the theater manager. The security guards of the AMC chain of theaters looked at the boss with a gratified smile and maintained order with sweat on their foreheads. After all, the audiences who could come to the advanced screening and buy high-priced tickets were basically core fans. They had been looking forward to another superhero under Marvel appearing on the screen for a long time. Thousands of words were summed up in one sentence. Are the tickets sold out? Sold out. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up, and the beginning was the Marvel label with exciting music imprinted in the audience's mind, and then the content. 1942, Tønsberg, Norway. A group of German soldiers broke into an ancient tomb, and the leader muttered and muttered that he wanted to find a cosmic cube containing infinite energy. After careful exploration, in front of a wall with a world tree engraved on it, the secret compartment opened, and a wonderful cube shining with blue light was obtained. The scene turned, and the camera came to a conscription physical examination room. Among a large group of naked men, Steve Rogers' frail body was particularly eye-catching. From time to time, there were a few sneers from the crowd next to him. Many people, including the physical examination instructor, were surprised to see how this weak chicken had the courage to walk in here. The audience watched with interest, and Steve was eliminated as expected. At night, Steve, who was a little disappointed, went to a movie theater to watch a movie. During the movie, a man made a loud noise that made him stand up to stop him. As a result, after the movie ended, he was dragged to the corner of the street by the other party and beaten up. Steve picked up the lid of the trash can and held it in front of his chest, but the other party still kicked him over. If it weren't for his good friend Bucky who showed up, this beating might not be easy. After Bucky beat the scoundrel away, he took Steve's draft form and teased him, because Steve had participated in the draft many times, and it was illegal to modify the information for this, and advised him not to do it in the future. If he couldn't be a soldier, he could do something else. But Steve was just a little surprised to see his good brother in a handsome military uniform. He knew that Bucky had joined the 107th Infantry Regiment and was about to go to Europe to fight against the asterisk. And for this farewell, Bucky came to Steve to go to the Tomorrowland Expo together. On the stage, Howard Stark, dressed in a suit, introduced many new technologies to the guests who came, but when he showed the anti-gravity car, it was obvious that his skills were not good enough, and he fell from the air. When the accident happened, the guests were all backing away. Only Steve was still thinking about protecting the safety of others. This scene was clearly seen by a bald man in the stands. In just a few scenes, the characteristics of Captain America were explained in general, not sticking to the rules, but with a sense of responsibility. So when the bald man who claimed to be a research doctor of the Strategic Science Corps found Steve and asked him if he was willing to go to the battlefield and got a positive answer, everything became logical. In this way, Steve's military training life began. Although the team members who shared the same room with him thought he was a relative, the occasional strange eyes did not make Steve retreat. Under the supervision of instructor Peggy Carter, the large amount of daily training often made Steve, who was not in good physical condition, unable to complete it. On this day, during the routine long-distance running, Peggy suddenly issued a task, saying that if anyone could take down the flag on the pole, whoever could take a jeep with her back to the military camp. The soldiers were very excited. Whether it was the difference in status or Peggy's beautiful face, it gave them the motivation to challenge. You know, Liv Tyler's face was rated as the 50 most beautiful people in the world by Time magazine, and the cover photo of her lying on the bed in lace pajamas with a playful smile is the memory of countless people at night. Coupled with the temptation of military uniforms, not to mention the hard-trained soldiers, the audience's eyes were also completely hooked. As for the male compatriots, it was hard to suppress the inner turmoil under the visual instinct. Not to mention the close-up of the Russell brothers, which was almost on Liv's face. They seemed to be sultry and knowledgeable. However, the pole for raising the flag was smooth and high, and the soldiers could not climb it at all. When they were at a loss, Steve, who was at the end of the group, caught up with the main force. After learning the mission, he took off his hat and unscrewed the screws at the bottom. The flagpole naturally fell down, and the flag was easily removed. Ha ha ha, they are so funny. Steve sat in the jeep with the jealous eyes of the soldiers and sighed with hatred. Sometimes, it's better to use your brain. The audience burst into laughter. After training for a period of time, the bald doctor who agreed to Steve's enlistment came to the barracks with a colonel. During the chat, the two were talking about an experiment. The doctor said that the person he recommended was exactly what the experiment needed. But the colonel still disagreed when he saw Steve standing in the distance, saying that good character is only suitable for being a man, but not for winning a battle. Then, he took out a fake grenade as a prank and threw it into the middle of the training soldiers while yelling. As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers scattered, and Steve once again stepped forward and threw himself on the grenade, trying to use his body to weaken the impact of the explosion. This scene surprised Instructor Carter and the Colonel, who had just questioned it, but the doctor looked like he was not wrong. Facts have proved that Steve is exactly the person needed for the experiment. The violent gene modification of the super soldier serum cannot be controlled without good character, not to mention that it will magnify the advantages and disadvantages of human nature. In other words, if you survive the experiment but do not have a mind that can control power, it will also be unsuccessful, because before that, Schmidt, the leader of a Hydra organization called Hydra within the asterisk, had also been injected with this serum. Since then, he has become ambitious and tried to steal the status of God. But what the doctor didn't know was that after he escaped from the asterisk, Schmidt got the cosmic cube, really peeped into the realm of God, and had been sending people to get rid of this great talent with strong scientific research strength. The doctor told Steve all this and let him decide whether to participate in the experiment, and then turned away. Steve didn't think much about it and took Peggy's car early the next morning to prepare for the experiment. On the way there, Peggy suddenly asked, "Why you did that day?" Steve answered seriously, "If I ran away at that time, I would run away when I encountered such things in the future, but if I stood up firmly, things would always turn around." Carter was stunned. "You really don't know how to chat with women." Steve lowered his head. "After all, I have never danced with a lady." When studying in the United States, dances are common, and it is conceivable that Steve is not very popular with women. Chapter 889, The Promise of That Dance. Please subscribe and vote. The story of Captain America tells us men still need a body that can be handled, and being weak is not good. So after Steve accepted the experiment and endured the pain, he finally transformed himself and became a strong man. Unexpectedly, the killer sent by Hydra also sneaked up on the doctor, shot him, and decisively took poison after there was no hope of escape. After that, the main thread of the story was commercial and clear. After removing the clip of the male dancer, several shots similar to the test in Iron Man allowed the Colonel to find out the role of Steve, that is, his physical fitness and recovery ability far exceeding that of ordinary people, and soon decided to let him lead an elite team to carry out operations behind enemy lines. Their action power is strong and fast, and many difficult tasks have been solved one by one. At the same time, the internal forces gradually noticed Steve's strong combat power. One day, when Bucky's unit was defeated and captured by the enemy, Steve led his team members into the camp and successfully rescued everyone. It was just when he showed his skills and calm mind that Schmidt finally met Steve head on. The Hydra leader tore off the human skin mask, revealing an inhuman red face, and pretended to be cool across the sea of fire. "No matter what the doctor told you, I'm the one who has been transformed most perfectly." After that, he boarded the plane and ran away. At this point, the film is halfway through, and the remaining plot is the time to dig holes. First, the Colonel received intelligence that a train carrying a large amount of supplies would pass through a certain place, and asked Steve's elite team to go and destroy it. But unexpectedly, this was exactly the trap set by Hydra. When Steve, Bucky and his group slid down the rope to the train car, they went in and saw only fully armed enemies and no supplies. For a while, the two sides fought to a group. At Lyman's suggestion, this fight scene invited Yuan Jiaban to show the captain's close combat. But unexpectedly, the new weapon developed by the other side, after exploring and using the energy of the magic cube, was extremely powerful, and the American team lost Bucky. The high-speed train and the bottomless cliff set off the style of this scene. Now, it doesn't matter whether they are enemies or not. Stimulated by Bucky's death, Steve, under the consolation of Peggy, vowed to kill all Hydra heads. No matter how many heads they grow, they will be chopped off. After getting the vibranium shield given to him by Howard, Steve's fighting power has reached a higher level. The ambiguous scenes interspersed in the middle are also nothing to say. Liv Tyler's dance promises a heartbreaking point for many Captain America fans. On the plane, Steve confronted Schmidt again, and this time, he could not run away. Even if this guy shouted and tempted, saying that they would share the secret of becoming a god together, it still could not shake Steve's heart. The camera was tilted 45 degrees on the face of the Red Skull, with the unique ruthlessness of the villain's temperament. "Since you don't cooperate, you must destroy it." Hugo Weaving's acting skills are beyond words, and wearing a human skin mask does not affect his performance at all. After distracting the other party's attention, he suddenly raised his voice, looked hideous, and took out the Rubik's Cube weapon and blasted it. Bang! Crackling. After Steve was hit, his shield rolled to the side, and a bright red spilled from the corner of his mouth. The fierce fight between the two cyborgs is also the climax of the whole play, igniting the emotions of the audience. It is mainly due to the foreshadowing in the previous scenes, such as Peggy's kiss goodbye and the pain of losing Bucky, which easily makes the audience feel a sense of common hatred and hatred. Then, watching the Red Skull gain the upper hand by sneaking, it is inevitable to encourage Captain America. This is also a common grasp of contradictions and the use of dramatic tension in movies. After Steve was beaten for a long time, he got the shield again, and a classic spinning attack knocked down the weapon and activated the cosmic cube. The rising and tearing sense of time and space, the blue light hit the Red Skull, a scream, a living person disappeared, and then everything returned to calm. But after the big boss was conquered, the crisis was not over. The large amount of explosives to be detonated on the plane also needed to be dealt with, and the inner sense of responsibility made Captain America make a choice. Before the forced landing and early detonation, Peggy received the last words, "Point, the dance may have to be held another day." The beauty shed tears, as if she had guessed something. The audience watched the plane rushing into the ice with a heart-wrenching emotion. At that moment, it was simply amazing. Bucky should have more roles. This is the speech of the comic fans. Captain America is still handsome. Appreciation of the actor. It's not as good as Iron Man, and it doesn't have the kind of punching feeling of the Incredible Hulk. Overall, it's a bit lackluster. This is an objective fan who has watched the movie. But no matter what, Captain America has improved the fluency of the plot, while retaining the wonderful plot of the previous work. It is still an improvement. The specific manifestation is the satisfaction collection report given by the research organization. The score is not low, and the audience's favorable rate has reached 77%, but the proportion of female audiences is lower, and the feedback from the channel suppliers of derivatives is not bad. Some of the best-selling theater showcases, dozens of sets of proportional figures were sold out, almost as soon as the fans left the theater. From time to time, there were people who were equally excited and hurried to urge for the supply. When these situations were summarized to the ears of channel dealers such as Hasbro, who were particularly concerned, they couldn't help but exclaim that they could make money again. Moreover, the rise of Marvel has made many film media people consider whether to take advantage of the popularity, publish some special topics, and earn some traffic. As for the stacker holders, they are calm and don't have to worry about the film being dragged down and affecting the subsequent market effect of linkage. In other words, after the movie is released, the sales data of primary derivatives and the conversion rate of fans are basically the most worthy points of attention for other brands. Anyway, the more popular the primary derivatives are, and the higher the conversion rate is, the broader the potential consumer market is, the more stable the fans' acceptance of the character IPs, and the more popular the copyright images. A careful review of Marvel's profit map shows that the company has a strong self-profitability through the channel business and surrounding markets developed from its film business. As a relatively prominent cash cow, it has contributed a lot to Mickey Mouse's siege. Of course, its current means are not rich enough. After all, Firefly cannot compare with Disney, but this model of taking a point to lead the whole is very easy to attract the favor of other capitals. Even if the profit sharing is small, when all are added up, it is also a profit chain that produces a continuous flow of income. Now, when giants such as KFC and Burger King also begin to actively accept and expand their value together, Marvel will only grow step by step into a bottomless pit that sucks money from fans. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 890, Just Okay, subscribe, vote. The results are acceptable, and the reputation is above the standard. The advance box office of Captain America is off to a good start. To be more precise, our goal has been initially achieved. 320 theaters have earned a total of $5.77 million, with an average of $18,000 per theater. It's a bit regrettable that the upper limit of the subject matter seems to be not high, and everyone is tired of war dramas. On the phone, Lyman, who was at the forefront of the distribution, summarized the situation of other theaters after the premiere, with a little sigh in his words. In 2009, after experiencing the baptism of many routines, American audiences became more difficult to serve. This is like the development of online fantasy literature, from the divorce flow to the invincible flow at the beginning to the teaching flow, and the variant of the genius son-in-law flow. If you use the previous routine market to connect with the current audience, it will definitely not be popular. The same is true for Captain America. Of course, this does not mean that the popularity of the characters is not good. The average attendance rate of Captain America in the advance show is about 95%, which shows that the number of fans of the three Marvel giants is very considerable. The only difference is that the appearance method in the comics, that is more in line with the audience's aesthetic taste, is not good at enhancing the sense of pleasure and showing the style. You know, the older generation of action movie stars are all gone now. War dramas are essentially in the field of action, and World War II is the most portrayed period. No matter how they are filmed, the audience will feel familiar with it, so it is naturally not fresh. Although comic fans find the effect of restoring the screen quite interesting, it is undeniable that the first film in which Captain America appears has a low drama ceiling. The biggest role is to pave the way for the subsequent major events. After the audience left, most of the comments given were that there were not many eye-catching scenes, except for the promise of the dance and the death of Bucky, but there was nothing too bad, so it was not to say that the camera images and scenes were not handled well. Overall, the image of Captain America as a smart and responsible person has been established. After the call was hung up, compared to Lyman's slight reluctance, Lyman felt somewhat relieved. He took the linkage report reached with various brands, thinking that under the direction of the Russo brothers, there was more friendly audience feedback than the previous version, and the profit margin would probably be expanded. After all, the greater the influence of Marvel, the lower the market threshold. The first Captain America movie was a little better, and the role it played was an all-round rise. This point was proved by the fact that other character types became more valuable after the first Avengers gathering. At such a critical moment of development, Lyman was willing to strive for the slightest improvement in the film itself. Similarly, after the advance screening, the audience came forward to speak out. Captain America, who was already at the center of publicity, had more discussion signs worthy of attention on major forums and film review websites this night. The daily activity of the topic doubled instantly. In addition to the usual questions of whether it is good to watch or not, fans are also happy to discover the little surprises hidden in the film. This has become a kind of fun in watching Marvel movies. For example, Stanley plays a 5-star general in the US Army this time. What does the World Tree symbolize? What effect did the Red Skull cause when he lifted the Rubik's Cube with his bare hands? And what foreshadowed the final sinking into the glacier? Many fans who have read comics and have some understanding of the relationship between Marvel characters and the direction of the plot have made bold speculations, which has led to the discovery of more details, which has also released a positive guiding effect on other wavering passers-by who want to watch the movie, and they may even bring their friends to watch the movie together. In the network public relations department of Blue Butterfly Pictures, everyone has experience in dealing with similar reactions and coping methods. They have to maintain the image of Marvel for a long time, and they have spent a lot of money. They will appropriately guide the direction of fans' topic discussions, and they will not prohibit emerging media platforms such as YouTube from using Marvel Element to make videos for profit. Lyman is more open to copyright tolerance than Disney. After all, Firefly does not have so much energy to build a global legal department. Therefore, as long as it is not excessive and slightly infringes on Marvel's copyright field, Lyman's attitude is acquiescence. Practices such as Marvel remixes, character stories, and original film plot analysis can increase hype traffic and expand influence, and should be released with goodwill. as long as the original film is not placed on unauthorized media websites or the department store clothing printed with Marvel element is not negotiated with Marvel, and the situation is serious, Lyman will not use the weapon of international copyright protection law at all. From this perspective, Man Media may not be able to provide more favorable protection than Disney, but Marvel may be spread faster and wider, because there is no restriction on secondary creation, and no matter those fans who have devoted themselves to YouTube, B-Station, A-Station, Nico Nico and other ACG atmospheres make profits in the process of spreading Marvel, it will undoubtedly expand the audience. It can be said that Lyman has devoted a lot of thought to Marvel. He also hopes that Marvel can become an indispensable member of the global hype-list earlier, and hopes that the huge cash flow brought by this brand in the process of expanding its territory can feed back the shortcomings of Man Media's foundation. However, compared with Lyman's satisfaction with Captain America's market expectations, Warner, which also has huge comic resources, is more depressed. Obviously, they wanted to better develop DC. After The Dark Knight, they felt that they had found out the audience's preferences and launched Watchmen, which was a more profound deconstruction of superheroes. At the same time, they also hired Zack Snyder, who quickly amazed Hollywood with the support of Lyman, as the director of the project at a high salary. During the preview, everyone at Warner felt that it was okay. How could it collapse like that again? Losing money must be unpleasant in the heart, and the energy and financial resources invested were not rewarded as they should be. But that's fine. Losing, winning, and even having some surprises and shocks is a common situation in film production. But DC was unlucky. How did its arch-rival Marvel develop so smoothly? How did it find out the market again and again? Why? Jeff Jones, the chief creative officer of DC Entertainment at the time, felt very hurt. He worked in Marvel Comics in his early years. Later, after jumping to DC Comics, he provided many ideas for the Identity Crisis event and created a large number of original characters such as Stargirl. Gradually, he was entrusted with important tasks. Just after 12 o'clock in the evening, he stayed up all night to finish reading the script of Smallville Season 9 Absolute Justice and pointed out the parts that needed to be revised. He sent it to other episode writers via email, and then he received a call from his subordinate. After the call was connected, the other party used very brief words to make him feel even worse. The performance of Captain America is F***K good again. Chapter 891 Sports Cars and Business Subs, Subscriptions, Tickets. Jeff Jones saw Captain America at the premiere, although he went home before attending the cocktail party. He also didn't think there was anything particularly outstanding about the movie. The old-fashioned plot and cliched development, but just based on the popular Marvel character Captain America, it directly made Watchmen look like nothing, referring to the commercial performance. Subjectively, Jeff himself is also a Zack Snyder fan. He thinks that the aesthetics of the shots given by Zack Snyder are definitely much better than the mediocre Captain America. In terms of intention, even if the core fans of the two themes are compared, Watchmen wins by a lot. This can be seen from the ratings given by film review websites such as IMDb and Yahoo. But from a utilitarian perspective, or from the perspective of the investors, of course Captain America wins. At least, the threshold for watching Captain America is not high. Even if the audience does not understand the comic setting at all, they can still feel involved and not even be confused about the relationship between the characters. Well, it's a bit like a routine that wins people's hearts. Marvel's movies are very particular about using relatively mature selling points and rarely innovate. It seems that they may not be very touching, but they are more practical. If Watchmen is compared to those high-end limited edition sports cars, then Marvel is a business of that takes the route of being close to the people. It is more universal and down to earth, but it does not give people such a high-end feeling. In later generations, people always complain that Marvel is not deep enough and DC is more artistic. This can also be applied to it, because DC itself has not yet found a clear adaptation direction in the system of Warner's senior management, and most of the DC characters are indeed more dramatic. This is the temperament of the origin of creation. Marvel certainly has the abuse part, but relatively speaking, the creators headed by Stan Lee did not focus on this. After all, the differences in the background of the times and social trends have led to DC heroes being more classical and more deified. Later generations also like to move closer to this aspect. This is the origin of DC, while Marvel heroes are more secular and more humane. This is the origin of Marvel's creation. For example, most of the places that appear in DC comics are fictional, while most of the places in Marvel are real. DC heroes regard superpowers as a blessing from God, while Marvel heroes regard them more as a curse. Most DC heroes get their superpowers from God, while most Marvel heroes get them through technological means or experimental products. In addition, Warner is superstitious about big directors, and big directors generally have their own styles. Even if they intervene in the creation, they are more or less integrated. Most of Marvel is busy with Kevin Feige. Now with Lyman's supervision, it is better to say that it is deconstruction, foreshadowing, integration, and secularity rather than the release of the director's style. It is always in the sound and picture experiments and type integration, so that the audience's viewing experience is taken to a high level. This leads to the frequent release of Marvel's excellent works, but the lack of masterpieces, and once Warner is lucky, it will suddenly burst out with classics in film history, but most of the time they are purposeless, and don't know what they are doing at all. There is a lack of a big housekeeper who makes plans step by step, and is convinced by the management and shareholders. In other words, Marvel is already far ahead of DC in terms of strategy. When Warner Bros. Encounters failure and thinks about whether to ignore DC for a while, shoot a Harry Potter movie, or start a prequel to The Lord of the Rings to make money, Marvel has already clung to fans and tried to get onlookers to join in. As a result, when Warner Bros. Looks back, it is almost impossible to see the back of Marvel, and even the tail gas cannot be smelled. This is actually quite a blow to DC's true fans. The neighbors are constantly making moves, while their own company is dragging its feet and always making some weird things. How long can the enthusiasm last? The loss of users is actually a very difficult process to detect, but the obvious fluctuations in the Marvel market must also be affected by the poor performance of DC. The summer season has just begun, and DC is in a gloom because of Marvel's good market performance again. But apart from watching, they really can't do anything, because the decision to establish a project and develop a new play needs to be affirmed by Warner Bros. What makes DC feel more stressed is that not only movies, but also comic adapted television is threatened by Marvel. The development of the plot of Daredevil and Kingpin in the first half of the autumn season Hell's Kitchen has gained high ratings, while the ratings of Smallville broadcasted in the same period are much lower due to the problem of audience fatigue. Such a setback makes DC, which has always maintained its king status in the comics industry, feel bad. This is simply digging at the roots of DC. The same circle expands dividends. Of course, it will be compared, but DC is suppressed, which is not okay. The next day, Jeff Jones ran straight to the office of Diane Nelson, chairman of DC Entertainment, and reported these situations. The current market share of the comics side is declining, and the decline is obvious, while Marvel is aggressive, and it's time to find a way. Save performance. Seeing Jeff coming in, Nelson also had a headache. He was the one who understood the changes in the market direction the most, but what's the use? If you want to start a new movie, you should wait. The company has already made it clear that it will invest resources in Harry Potter. But, it's not optimistic anymore. If we are willing to wait, will Marvel slow down? Nelson shook his head. I can't do anything about it, and there is no rush. What to shoot, and how to shoot, are not our concerns. This is the most common problem faced by management without core voice. What about Watchmen? Jeff asked again. The promotion effect of home entertainment is better than we expected. If everything goes well, we will still be the DVD sales champion in May. By then, we can make up some funds and start other projects to give shareholders more confidence. Although he had some psychological preparation before coming, he heard that his boss was also subject to many constraints, and because of the failure of operating DC projects one after another, especially the market was cold again, he really couldn't fight for anything. Jeff thought silently in his heart. This year, DC may not do anything again. In Warner's concept, DC is just a treasure that sometimes has a very exciting profit margin and gives people a surprise, but it is also just a treasure that needs to be carefully excavated, especially in 2009, when things were not going well. When you find a treasure but can't find anything good, just don't bother with it. Anyway, DC''s profit making means are not only to operate new projects, but also to expand copyrights. Even if the dividends of The Dark Knight are enough for DC to consume for a long time, Warner does not think that Marvel, which has been profitable, is really anything. It is nothing more than developing a few valuable characters. Although Iron Man is surprisingly profitable, everything else is very standard, and the distribution rights of Iron Man are still in the hands of Warner. The two companies are not mortal enemies, and the money cannot be earned by one person alone, right? Chapter 892. Dare to think, subscribe, vote. After the premiere, Captain America easily killed the suspense of who would be on the weekly list as many people expected. In the first 3 days of its release, it earned $71.26 million in 3,700 theaters. Under this influence, the total weekly market of the entire North American film market, after the injection of strong fresh blood, rose slightly by 4.2% compared with last week, with a total of $152 million, beating the $135 million 3 years ago when Mission Impossible was the banker. Setting a record high for the first weekend in May. Of course, compared with the investment, the first week box office of Captain America is not particularly amazing, which almost confirms that its box office will be around $300 million in North America. But for superhero movies, if they don't fail, there is room for the value of copyright to play, not to mention that the works in the same period have been squeezed and suffered losses, and they are not dispensable. For example, last week's Last Champion Bewitched starring Beyoncé fell 42% in the second week, earning $15.42 million, and retreated to second place. However, apart from reporting these news, most media outlets quickly began to predict the next week's showdown, and unanimously believed that Star Trek would win, and Captain America would not be able to win the championship. As a sci-fi epic classic series older than Star Wars, Paramount invested $140 million in production budget, the highest in the series, and there is definitely hope. Although Spielberg has left Paramount, they still have a cooperative relationship, and the two sides can fully complement each other's strengths and win together. In fact, Captain America is not bad, but it does not even have the market dominance of Iron Man launched by Marvel last year. If it wants to continue the market in the next week, it still feels that it can't come up with something that can detonate the market when other new works are eyeing it. Again, the competition in the summer season is fierce every year, and this year is even more so. If it can win the championship continuously, what level of dominance must it reach? So many media outlets were diverted by Paramount while reporting and summarizing their achievements, and boasted about Star Trek, which has not yet been released. Although this kind of thing of being stepped on to get promoted is actually very common in the summer season, even Lyman himself thinks so. It can only be said that it is for the sake of their own interests. Captain America is better than the previous life, which has made him quite satisfied. It is normal for the market share to be snatched away by the powerful enemy, who is about to enter the market. In the office, Lyman's attention was quickly diverted to the peripheral benefits brought by Captain America, with the film attracting nearly 9.5 million viewers. To support it in the first week, the number of buyers in the Marvel derivative market must have suddenly increased in a short period of time. After all, the psychological defense line of teenagers' impulsive consumption is indeed easier to provoke than that of adults, especially after just appreciating the heroic figure of Captain America. The market conversion is relatively smooth. Although from the data, Captain America's first week development share is also not better than Iron Man, but because the Marvel hype has a real improvement after 2 works compared to last year, the sales of primary derivatives soon reached 10.7 million and is still increasing, so the channel dealers, whether Hasbro or Amazon senior executives, have a closer attitude towards this business. Apart from other things, Marvel has shown a trend of profitability for 3 consecutive films, which is obviously a promising future. Of course the proportion is different. Even Fox, which adjusted the schedule to let Captain America take the lead and Columbia have their own calculations. Even the major brokerage companies that are more marginalized in participating in the profit carnival are paying more attention to Marvel's ability to create stars. Chris Evans, needless to say, has previously relied on a few works in the role of the Human Torch to gain a foothold in the second line and is still the idle path of Tom Cruise, who has both face and temperament. It's just that the market appeal is not so intuitive. Although there is value, it still needs to be cultivated and depends on luck. A highly popular role like Captain America Steve, which has a very good response and a positive setting, can bring him not only a temporary limelight after the release, but also a surge in popularity and traffic, attracting more brands who want to take advantage of his potential, but also a guaranteed series for many years to come, and a more solid foundation. The same is true for the heroine Liv Tyler. A first-tier blockbuster that is expected to be profitable at the box office represents an all-round improvement in her worth, market, and popularity. Her market height will definitely increase. She already has the external conditions and good acting skills to become a first-tier actress. There is no doubt that her development path is more stable. Not to mention that Hollywood, which is superstitious and chasing popularity, soon threw an olive branch, and the project selection became wider. This is undoubtedly a good cycle. Although the sudden increase in the salary may dispel the idea of most studios to reach a cooperation. Under a series of favorable circumstances, Lyman and Kevin Feige began to formulate Marvel's subsequent pace. When Iron Man 2 introduces the remaining characters, the first stage of the foreshadowing will be completed. Lyman handed over a cigar and continued, in terms of TV series, Agent Carter can also be added to the SHIELD system as an important character. The script style will be written according to the spy war dramas on the market, and the cost will be lowered. Let's see if we can increase the traffic after Captain America's bonus. Kevin Feige nodded subconsciously, indicating that he understood, but soon asked, but in terms of the choice of Carter, Liv Tyler is not suitable. Not to mention, whether she is willing to leave the film industry temporarily to shoot a spin-off series. Her price is a bit expensive, but if she doesn't do this, the effect may not be so good. The first impression is still very important. It's okay, doesn't DC often use new faces? We don't have to make the series particularly successful. It's just a normal expansion of the character arc. Lyman said, taking out a detailed market analysis of Captain America from the drawer. Kevin, do you think our pattern is still too small? Has it? Kevin Feige felt that Marvel's development was already very good. Before that, they really integrated their business with the belief of going all out. Columbia has always been reluctant to let Marvel use any copyright of Spider-Man, because our achievements are not enough to impress them. Even though we completed Iron Man, Hulk, and Captain America relatively smoothly, they were still not amazing enough to shock people. Lyman shook his head and said, so, the next most important event, the Battle of New York, must increase Spider-Man's first week box office by a large margin, so that Sony can see it. Then, you can talk to them in person. Increase by a large margin? 300 million in 3 days. This is too bold. Chapter 893 next week. Subscribe, vote. In the future, the strong superposition effect of the Avengers is indeed beyond the imagination of many people. This is due to the limitation of thinking. Even if Kevin Feige's original idea was just that grouping can easily gather momentum, whether it is the convenience of publicity and promotion or the cohesion of fans, it may be good, but he never thought that there would be such an outrageous record. In this era, whether it is the masterpiece series Star Wars that Americans believe in for a generation, as of 2009, the IP output is more than 41 billion, or Warner, which can easily win more than 27 billion market by relying on the Harry Potter series alone, before Marvel use the solid single point guidance and the breakthrough tactics. The most representative case in the film industry today, the investors who really use works to guide the market did not have such awareness. The significance of the Avengers to Marvel is not only the record-breaking box office, but also the most luxurious and highest level brand image display in the hearts of global audiences, even in the hearts of movie fans who have never been exposed to American comics, just like shooting a sufficiently distinctive promotional advertisement for its characters. It has a strong guiding role. coupled with the usual low threshold and the emphasis on the enjoyment of sound and picture such as lens, special effects, and scenes, the audience will unconsciously feel the atmosphere of Marvel's big family, and then identify with the Marvel brand, and even unconsciously understand it in depth. Everyone knows that interest is the first factor in watching movies. Publicity and marketing are all considering this. Whether it is hyping up topics, or talking about the director and the main creator, the purpose is to make the audience willing to go to the theater. From this aspect, Marvel's production concept of taking points to lead the whole, and then using the big to support the small is more like a more scientific, sustainable, and less costly way to guide traffic. So this is why when Marvel really throws this set out and stands firm, those originally unknown and undeveloped characters under its banner seem to no longer need comics to pave the way, because the audience finds that, whether it is comics or not, the movie is good and that's it. This kind of marketing is the impression that Marvel wants to leave on global audiences, and it can directly achieve a strategy for brand building. The MCU universe is also a nuclear bomb that completely pulls away from its peers and consolidates its own position. After the King Bomb, it slowly develops characters and expands other businesses. DC is much stronger than Marvel in the fields of television, opera, games, cards, and interaction, and competes with American comics such as DC and Dark Horse in channels. Of course, Kevin Feige can't imagine it. After all, according to the current trend, the threshold of movie box office does not seem to be challenged by Marvel's projects that are slightly worse than the top and better than the bottom, but he still carefully continues to develop according to Lyman's intentions. In the field of television, the not so bright ratings of the Howling Commandos are really not cost effective, so after the hasty plot of the first season 13 episodes, Nick Fury also changed from a soldier charging in the front to a behind the scenes leader, who relies on a serum with greater side effects. It can also be regarded as a role that can lead to the establishment of SHIELD and the addition of Agent Carter. In this way, Samuel can reduce the number of scenes in the play, giving his subordinates room to play, which is not abrupt. Another thing is that the Hell's Kitchen project is good. In addition to the Daredevil line, the second season adds appropriate gangster scenes, introduces Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, and the love scenes between the two are also worth mentioning. The main line is still the Hell's Kitchen. Just when he was preparing and pulling together the screenwriter team, the second week of May ended. On the weekly chart, roughly the same as predicted by industry insiders, Star Trek, which has been filmed to the 11th part, and is also the sentiment of a generation, really pulled Captain America off the horse, robbing $72.5 million in the premiere revenue in 3,849 theaters in North America, and the average score per theater reached $18,830. If the advanced screening on Thursday night is added, this sci-fi epic that has been reformed and reshuffled in the new century will directly earn $76.5 million in the first week, which is better than the previous estimates of all walks of life. Moreover, considering the market premise that old school sci-fi films will definitely make the audience a little tired, and the previous opening peak of the series of only $30.72 million held by the 8th film Star Trek, First Contact, it is definitely a pleasant surprise for the investor Paramount. Why? New wine in old bottles, it worked, and performed better than expected. The gold mine, that was thought to be abandoned, has been dug up again. Director J.J. Abrams has become even more famous because of this, although he has reached the peak of the TV field by directing the TV drama Lost. His screen weight is not enough. Even if Cloverfield, led by him as a producer, is successful, everyone's focus is on the work itself as a special effect oriented and outstanding performance, which should be attributed to the visual colors injected into the film by Weta Digital. So in this year's Star Trek, this guy directly served as the screenwriter, director, and producer, showing his talent to the greatest extent, and ensuring a great success at the opening, and the word of mouth is also not bad, and then he was finally praised by the media. Nothing else. He is indeed a talent, but he was recruited by Paramount. It was also under the influence of such a strong enemy, especially the fact that the two sides had similar positioning in attracting passers-by audiences, that Captain America dropped 51% of its screening share after being usurped by Star Trek. Not only was it not as strong as Iron Man, nor as lucky as the Hulk, but the big brother of the schedule was not so strong. The performance of $34.92 million in the second week fell a little more, and it was more difficult to match the $300 million mark in North America. It is slightly gratifying that Captain America's overseas box office, supported by Fox, successfully broke through $100 million, which is a great success. After 10 days of screening, the global total accumulated $213 million. So, in addition to having a great impact on neutral audiences, after all, many people will watch whichever movie performs well, and the market effect of the weekly champion is still very helpful, but the squeeze on Captain America's core audience and profit space is not high. In the minds of the youth group, comic adaptations are definitely more attractive. Besides the first and second place, Matthew McConaughey, who was greatly influenced by Lyman, consolidated his career with the huge success of The Lake Monster. His new film Ghosts of Girlfriends Past, which he collaborated with Warner, also took over the female market, which is increasingly valued by the studios, with relatively low publicity and promotion investment. It earned $17.87 million in 2,450 theaters, proving that he does have a certain box office guarantee. At least his appearance and performance are online. As for the remaining 4 to 10 on the list, the total combined revenue was only $27.81 million. The theater schedule was squeezed to the limit by the 3 well-performing movies. It is normal to have such an output. Anyway, the movie market is not accumulated by quantity. In the off-season, when it cannot attract audiences, this situation becomes more and more obvious. Chapter 894, Balance. Please subscribe and vote. A new round of competition has arrived for manufacturers in various fields that cooperate with Marvel. Because it can be seen that Captain America is still profitable and has traffic, it is inevitable that more smart people will come to contact it. Among them, those giant manufacturers are of course more arrogant. Basically, the brand publicity department files a case, and then comes to the brand department of Marvel Entertainment to discuss. The conditions are put forward by the manufacturer, and generally they will not last long. It is nothing more than taking a sum of money and borrowing the current popular element to increase the popularity of their own products. For example, when Burger King launched the Captain America meal, Pepsi only changed a little bit of the packaging of cola. Marvel can only earn some licensing fees from it, and there is no sales revenue sharing of the same joint model at all. It can even be said that the effect is not good. After this cooperation, whether it can cooperate next time depends on others' intentions. Of course, although Lyman attaches great importance to long-term interests and is a businessman who complements resources and cooperates for win-win results, the giant manufacturers do not treat them differently. When cooperating with studios such as Warner and Universal, they also have similar conditions. Soon, after the third week of the release of Captain America, the box office fell again by 46%, earning $16.06 million on the weekend. When it fell from the second to the third, the global box office of the film had accumulated $292 million. At the same time, the marketing department of Pepsi Cola also made a slightly polite call to David Mazur of Marvel's brand department. Although they did not reveal too much, and the sales of the new packaging of cola launched that month were even more vague, they still expressed their willingness to continue cooperation with Actions and immediately remitted a sum of money to obtain the Thor authorization. Just like the very common balance theory in the business world, when one party's comprehensive strength continues to increase and is indeed profitable, the other party will not be so high and mighty. In fact, one's own affairs are clear to oneself. Captain America can help Pepsi open up the situation, which is a valuable cooperation. After a wave of business negotiations, Captain America conservatively estimates that Marvel will bring no less than $130 million in revenue. After all, Marvel can treat those small manufacturers with greater needs with very harsh conditions. This was the case with the factory that produced wall lamps and lamps. Their products had no special selling points, and they could not compete with other manufacturers in the same field on the market, and could only barely take up some market share. But after the launch of the Iron Man series, the market share and sales performance increased rapidly, and the sales volume in the first quarter directly doubled by 174%, so it was even more necessary to obtain the brand authorization of Marvel. However, Marvel senior management is not stupid. Some products have a wide customer base, and the production quality and distribution channels are very strong. Naturally, Marvel is at a disadvantage in the scope of cooperation, and those manufacturers with general market prospects do not need Lyman's advice. The cooperation plan is definitely biased towards Marvel. So if you want to maintain the uniqueness of Feast Lighting Factory in the field of Marvel lamps, use Marvel Element to enhance product competitiveness and prevent competitors from entering the market. The price will certainly not be cheap, and it is certainly not something that can be solved by a licensing fee. Marvel is killing, and it is also ruthless. The entire plan includes product entry fees, advertising fees, and even sales rebates. In fact, it is still humane, but compared with some manufacturers, this is like long-term blood-sucking. Feast's boss doesn't have much room to refuse. If the market share does not go up, even if no one is sucking his blood, he still won't make much money. It can only be said that each person's assessment and strength are unequal. Angels and Demons, a novel generally recognized as more suitable for film adaptation than the Da Vinci Code, narrowly beats Star Trek by $5 million in its first week, with 3,527 theaters earning only $48 million in its premiere. Not only was it far behind its sister film The Da Vinci Code $77.07 million, $20,635 per theater, it was even lower than the industry's conservative estimate of $55 million. As a commercial blockbuster that also cost around $150 million, Angels and Demons can be said to be the worst performing of the three blockbusters that have been released in the summer. Even in terms of word of mouth, it did not win a media review of 49 points, Yahoo C+, and a Rotten Tomatoes freshness rating of 38%. 73 votes in favor, and 117 votes against. It received very harsh judgments, and was even called by the Golden Raspberry organizers to be shortlisted for various awards in advance. By the way, this is also the second time that Tom Hanks has been selected as the worst actor in this series. The indelible screen stain continues. With such a reputation, it is conceivable that the loss of subsequent audiences will be more serious. On the morning of May 19th, Lyman put down the newspaper and felt that the report was too subjective. The combination of Ron Howard and Tom Hanks did not continue the good results of the first film, but a movie that focuses on puzzles and focuses on the details of the scene must have led to a low ceiling for the actors. Just like you can't ask Michael Bay to insert some interesting literary drama into a commercial work, this is unrealistic and a bit too much. After all, Tom Hanks played this series just to earn a salary, and he didn't pursue fame so much. Lyman shook his head, and he didn't have much joy when he saw that his archenemy had fallen. Since Captain America's performance has become normal, his focus has been on the production of clothing for the affordable market. Not long ago, he talked with Joseph and the staff he sent had already negotiated business OEM in the mainland. While eating breakfast, Eva came down from upstairs with a pout. "New Moon is about to be finished. Do you have any plans?" Lyman thought about the things he had to do later and quickly replied, "Forget it, I won't go. You can discuss this with Ryan and hold a wrap-up party for this play, because director Chris Weitz has the idea of making meritorious service. After committing a crime, he usually works very hard and does not procrastinate at all. From the start of filming to now, it only took 2 months to complete 90% of the scenes, and the work efficiency is very high. As for the quality of the film, the sequel has made some progress in the fluency of the plot compared to the first one, but it lacks a little bit of the delicate meaning unique to female directors. However, the audience group of the Twilight series is also relatively single, and it is still relatively excellent overall. Estimating the time, the schedule is still sufficient, and it will be enough in the later stage. Thinking of this, Lyman called Lionsgate executive John Phelan again, asking their company to plan a plan for overseas promotion and contact with brands and theaters in advance. Considering the profitability of the first film, the second film must be more aggressive in generating revenue. Of course, in addition to this, the second film of Iron Man must also be put on the preparation schedule to establish the project first. Without a doubt, this is the last piece of the puzzle before the assembly. In this regard, Warner's distribution department and major guilds and CAA are of course very cooperative, especially Warner, whose performance this year is not good, and they are in need of low risk and high profit projects. Chapter 895 New Director, Subscribe, Vote. What, boss, you're not going to make a sequel to Iron Man? Kevin Feige was a little surprised. This movie was planned long ago, but he couldn't understand what he said, but his attitude was indeed very firm. You know, the boss's directing ability, including the fan base he has built over the years, can easily stir up the movie market. It is really Marvel's trump card. Unfortunately, this card can't be played. For a while, Kevin was even a little worried about whether the sequel could continue the popular temperament. Among so many projects, Iron Man is still the best-selling, especially in the offline market. Robert Downey Jr.'s popularity can also be seen. Lyman smiled and said, "The foundation has been laid. As long as there are no major problems with the framework and the audience positioning is not clear enough, nothing will go wrong. In addition, haven't we already determined the role configuration for the first phase of the Avengers? You should have confidence in everyone." Lyman looked at the other party with a sharp eye. "Boss, do you have a candidate?" Kevin Feige asked. Lyman didn't answer, but handed over a resume. If nothing unexpected happens, if he is willing to take over, then he will be the one. Kevin looked at it and found that the director's resume was not outstanding. At the age of 41, he had only made 4 feature films on the screen. August 23rd, The Whirlpool, Polytechnic Institute, including the joint debut Cosmos, all of which were movies that did not shine much. Even if it was written that his return rate was okay, he was just an ordinary director with a medium to low cost. There are a lot of people like this in Hollywood. Just from this, Kevin couldn't see anything particularly shining, and he did ask so. Canadian director, Denis Villeneuve. Lyman sat in the boss chair and explained, "Don't think that his achievements are not outstanding, but he just hasn't encountered a platform for him to perform. He is a Canadian, and he lacks some connections to make a living in Hollywood. What's more, Albatross Pictures, which appreciates him, is just a studio that barely gets involved in Hollywood. The financial reserves are not strong enough to make big productions. It seems that he is actually quite qualified. He has made 4 movies, and 3 of them are profitable. The themes are drama, crime, and thriller. At least it proves that he can handle mainstream Hollywood movies. Another thing is his style. He likes to lay the groundwork for clues, and the narrative and details can be tightened without procrastination. In addition, he can bring some serious thinking to the audience after entertainment. Isn't this exactly the director that Iron Man 2 wants? Lyman certainly knows this guy. Denis Villeneuve is one of the few directors who has come out of his training and has become a representative of Hollywood's foreign directors. He has made great progress in Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 and has a very good grasp of the balance between visual enjoyment and humanistic absurdity. In layman's terms, this guy can not only coordinate large scenes, but also has great literary drama. In addition, he has been neither up nor down for so many years, and his personality has been polished very smoothly, so he is not particularly tough during filming, and his salary is not high. In the previous life, the mistakes in the camera movement of some scenes in Iron Man 2 and the rendering of the subtle atmosphere between the characters were the points that many film critics complained about. Objectively speaking, Jon Favreau's directing ability is actually okay, but his weakness is literary drama. As a commercial sequel, Iron Man 2 is actually acceptable, but it is not more or less, which makes the popularity accumulated in the first part not very successful, and the box office is almost the same as the first part. Of course, the first film was not like this, and the reputation was higher, because of the script setting, and Downey's varied and temperamental performance. After all, Tony Stark's playboy personality, who was indifferent at the beginning, naturally had room for reversal, and the entertainment was also pulled up. At the press conference at the end, he publicly declared that he was Iron Man, which was a long-delayed emotional outburst, referring to the audience, forming a good alienation effect. To put it bluntly, it was a high-level strong sense of substitution and cool. Lyman, who is familiar with the routine, knows very well what the audience's climax is, either very novel and anti-routine, or artificially enhances the dramatic conflict. The more common ones like Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman all face a dark spiritual history that is fatal. Their biggest enemy has always been themselves. As long as their mood is stable, they can defeat the enemy and fight back when frustrated. But the second Iron Man can't play the reversal of the first film, coupled with the cheap American humor mixed in by John Fee, and the fact that he is not responsible for threading the needle and guiding the plot, fighting for a while, then fighting for a while, and making a fuss for a while, which is of course a step backward compared to the previous work. In other words, there is not enough contradiction or enemy to form a real confrontation with Iron Man, which is a good foil for Tony Stark and improves his performance. Heroes also need villains to achieve success. The presence of the whip in the second film is too thin. Tony's father Howard plagiarized his father's technology. The motivation for revenge is not persuasive. It is better to introduce the Hydra organization, that is, billionaire Justin Hammer is the boss behind the scenes, and the whip is just a pitiful tentative tool. In this way, the layering will be slightly smoother. Again, the Earth has the pot of Hydra's back, and the universe has the pot of sweet potato spirits. This cheeses the fans, and improves the fun of watching the movie. Of course, with such an arrangement, the director must be good at controlling the integration of drama and special effects. The rhythm should be natural, the scenes should be exciting, and the scenes should not be wasted. It would be silly to just quarrel. In summary, Denis Villeneuve can meet these requirements, and he is not yet famous and cheap, so he is of course a very handy tool for filming. Don't worry, you still have a lot of time to contact him. If he really doesn't work, it will be troublesome to change him, but it doesn't matter. In addition, the actors for Hawkeye and Black Widow need to be carefully selected. Remember, the premise is that you are willing to sign a long-term contract. As for other supporting roles, it doesn't matter. Choose some actors with good acting skills who can hold the stage. I will tell the major agencies about the casting. After the initial screening, I will do a careful research on them. Kevin Feige didn't hesitate and quickly thought about the problem from his own standpoint. You can let the media follow up appropriately or spread the news on the internet. Then they will definitely go crazy. Kevin Feige smiled. Now the whole Hollywood is paying attention to Marvel's works. After all, the success of Downey, Ruffalo, Evans and others is a kind of role model. If it is kept secret, the noise can be less. This is a great era. I believe those actors will seize the opportunity. In addition to hype, Lemon's purpose is actually to lower the price. After all, the more intense the competition, the more it can affect the quotation selection. He is becoming more and more proficient in this matter. Chapter 896 Warner, the unlucky guy in 2009. Please subscribe and vote. Good winds help me soar to the sky. The wind that belongs to Marvel actually has a foundation. So after the sequel of Iron Man was publicly announced, it was quickly accepted by the market and heated up greatly, even diverting a lot of the popularity of Terminator 2018 that was being screened. Of course, this is the result of the combined effect of many factors. First, the combination of Cameron plus Schwarzenegger no longer took over the filming of Terminator, and the director Joseph McGinty-Mitchell, representative work Charlie's Angels and the male lead Christian Bale did not carry the banner. The pessimism of the money prospects began on the first day of Thursday's premiere of $13.37 million. In my impression, with such a big cast in the market, that was extremely expected in advance. The degree of disappointment is comparable to the release day of King Kong directed by Peter Jackson after the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The same disappointment, the same expectation, the more intense the feeling of dissatisfaction. The audience complained in various ways. Therefore, including Thursday, the first 4 days of the weekend, Terminator 2018 accumulated $56.38 million, but the opening scale was still 3,530 theaters in the first share of the schedule, which was obviously not worthy of such treatment. 15,000 per theater was really too little, which indirectly expressed the insufficient attendance. Although this is not a shameful number compared with the series, considering inflation, and comparing it with the box office performance of the old science fiction movie Star Trek, which also aimed to revitalize the series, the failure of Terminator 2018 is already indefensible. Warner Bros. Suffered. The summer blockbuster was screwed up. The investment in funds, schedule resources, publicity, and promotion energy did not get the expected return, and even cast a greater shadow on the future of the series. The main creators suffered, especially Christian Bale, who was determined to save the series and expand his acting range. Kingfisher Pictures, one of the investors, did give too much, and the management was taken over by his acquaintances. As a result, the results were a little bleak and far from expectations. Gail Ann Hurd suffered. Although the Terminator series was created by Cameron, the copyright was once in her hands. This person had a marriage with Cameron, and was also the noble person who helped Cameron to succeed. The failure of the fourth film undoubtedly greatly reduced the value of the Terminator. Second, Robert Downey Jr.'s popularity increased after filming Iron Man. After more than a year of fermentation, fans certainly want to see him continue to play Tony Stark, and the filming is very marketable. All of the above made a movie that has not yet been released so popular and attracted a lot of attention. However, compared with the actions of actors and agencies, Lyman has already waited for the talent he has chosen. Denis Villeneuve, the best director of the middle-aged generation in Canada. This is Kevin Feige, CEO of Marvel Studios. Hello, Director Villeneuve. Hello. Denis just received the news and rushed over immediately. He was quite restrained when he contacted Lyman and Kevin. After all, compared with these two, his resume is really not impressive. He was also surprised why he was chosen and had the possibility of directing a hot work like Iron Man, especially since Lyman has set a good example before. If he cannot continue well, the burden and pressure will be heavier. If the second part is not good enough, people will not know that the drama of the second part is not as good as the first one. They will only think that the director is not good, under the premise of changing people. This situation is particularly common in Hollywood. Terminator 2018 has just staged this scene. The main creative team that was compared feels embarrassed no matter how they look at it, and it also affects their personal interests and personal future. Of course, this is not because Denis Villeneuve will back down. As his agent pointed out, as long as the performance of the second part is better than the first part, there are many benefits to be gained. Apart from anything else, as long as he really replaces Lyman as the director of the sequel, regardless of whether he doubts it or not, at least he will quickly become popular and his popularity will rise. With fame and achievements, Hollywood will accept him more and more, and he will not have no good projects all year round, but only small works. He has lived such a life for too long. So when he got the script, the three began to discuss the shooting direction. Although he was uncomfortable with the restrictions on shooting freedom revealed by Lyman and Kevin, and the rules that could not be easily deviated from the details of the script, he agreed to all of them silently. In the past, it was a grassroots team, and his opinions were the most important to follow for the crew. Now it has risen to a big production, and there must be more rules. He thought, isn't it just to consider the character image and the opinions of the production team when shooting? It seems that it's nothing, so Denis Villeneuve did not show any dissatisfaction. Lyman looked like he wanted to laugh, but he held it back. He had to ensure the harmony of the crew, and that was based on the premise that no one could confront Kevin Feige casually and threaten his authority. Because Marvel movies are based on entertainment, the director doesn't need to be too active, which is why Lyman never asked Nolan to shoot, even though Nolan was the only person in the Man Media system who could touch Lyman's directorial status. Zack Snyder's handling of the story is far less clever than Nolan's. In terms of the camera, Zack Snyder's style is more colorful, but in terms of composition, Nolan is much better. Apart from other things, Lyman himself can't compare to him in terms of composition. He is good at handling rhythm and characters. The picture sense is not rich, and it is generally simple, unlike Nolan who wants to wrap a lot of information in each shot. Watching too many of his movies makes my head buzz, and I feel like the CPU is smoking. As for James Wan, he still needs to level up. He lacks some crew experience even for mainstream commercial blockbusters. He is not mature enough, and is still young. Among the three, Mexican Jerry Alfonso has a very high ceiling and can handle a wider range of themes, while the other two are seriously biased and cannot be changed. They have been stereotyped. In The Office, Lemon felt like an instructor, setting rules at the beginning of the training. He didn't breathe a sigh of relief until Dennis said goodbye and went back to discuss schedules and salary issues with his agent. Talent is hard to come by these days, boss, Kevin said, puzzled. If possible, maintain a better cooperative relationship with him for a longer period of time. Lemon responded without telling Kevin the reason. How could people who don't cheat understand the future? By the way, how's Captain America? It's dropped to 6th on the weekly chart, earning $8.66 million last weekend. Damn, the competition is too fierce. A blockbuster with a budget of $200 million has been squeezed like this in just the 4th week. Captain America's appearance doesn't seem to be very powerful. It's really limited by the lack of dramatic conflict. Forget it, as long as it can make money, it's better than Warner's comfortable life. Lemon muttered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 897, Profit Margin, Subscriptions, Vote. A few days later, after several rounds of negotiations, Denis Villeneuve joined the crew with a salary of $2.3 million. After the news was released, as expected, the director's reputation expanded, but most of the voices were questioned by fans and the media. It was once on the top 10 of Yahoo's topic list, attracting a lot of disputes. Some people say that Robert Downey Jr. is the soul of this series. He is still there, so it doesn't matter if he changes the director. Some people say that it was Lemon who made this movie, so it attracted so many audiences. There are crazy fans below who support it. Otherwise, why would a character who is not even the first tier in the comics have better performance than Captain America and Hulk? And the peripherals are also the best selling. Some people are just dissatisfied that Marvel's senior management will hand over such an important movie to an unknown director who has never heard of and who doesn't know where he came from. Even if they change people, Lemon doesn't want to direct anymore and doesn't have time. They have to find a decent one, right? Isn't this trying to ruin Iron Man? Oh, a small role under Albatross Pictures that is not even a big name director. Doesn't that show that he is even worse? Of course, Lemon, who made the decision, would definitely ignore these remarks, even if those media wanted to interview him. Netizens have limited memories, and such things will fade away after a while. They may not come up until the movie is released next year. Instead of wasting energy on a war of words, it is better to think about other things. Hasbro headquarters. Lemon took Lyman to this office building with a strong artistic style. Everywhere was painted, models of its own products, and image stickers. It's quite fun. Lemon silently evaluated. At the corner, a 5:1 ratio human-sized Bumblebee model stood coolly. In recent years, Hasbro's business strategy has been to increase corporate revenue in a three-pronged approach, namely, to increase core brands of toys and non-toys, to identify business opportunities and development trends and innovative products, and to sign licensing agreements with major entertainment companies or cultural companies around the world. In addition to accepting orders from Marvel, Hasbro is also the largest supplier in the Star Wars derivative market. Of course, that type also has many partners and complementary resources. On the contrary, Sony's flagship IP Spider-Man did not rely too much on external forces. They have more background than most companies, because Japan is the region with the most successful IP management. Among the top 10 global IP rankings, Japan occupies 5 seats: Pokémon, Hello Kitty, Anpanman, Mario, and Shonen Jump. What's even more outrageous is that in the comics industry, Shonen Jump's market value can match 10 Marvels. Before it was acquired, 99% of the profits of this comic company come from comic magazines and single comic books. As of 2009, they were $10.1 billion and $9.7 billion respectively, which can be called a mythical existence in the comics industry. On the contrary, other IPs are developed through multiple channels, such as television, movies, games, clothing, handmade dolls, etc. Shonen Jump adheres to the old-fashioned thinking and only focuses on the comics industry. Even if it is filmed, it does not interfere with the operation. Of course, the two came here for something. Brian Goldner, then the chief operating officer and director of Hasbro, politely met the two in the office. After some politeness, the other party started the topic first. Because of the decline in Captain America's box office, sales have also dropped rapidly recently. When it was first released, there were about 20 million in derivative income every day, and it has been rising slowly. In the past 2 days, it may be less than 7 million. Should we take some measures? Faced with Brian Goldner's suggestion, Lyman was not in a hurry to express his opinion. He asked for some benefits first. Why? Your company is going to support Captain America and jointly build momentum to increase the popularity? Hasbro is not a short-sighted company. Their senior management has held many meetings based on the increased revenue after obtaining the Marvel license, and they have long reached a consensus to hold this card. These days, the distance between countries is getting shorter and shorter. Even if France does not have a very mature surrounding market, Lyman still has other options, such as Disney, Sony, or Sanrio. Brian Goldner calmly released his goodwill, 20 million level of new exposure. What about you? We will contact Fox, TV commercials or something else. In short, we are acting as one. Then we have to hurry up. The longer we delay, the faster the popularity will fade. When we enter the stable period, we will not provide any extra channel resources. The specific situation will be arranged in a unified manner. The other party looked serious. Lyman nodded. Everyone knew this. Besides, Transformers 2 will be released in a while, and Hasbro will definitely shift its focus. He knew all this, otherwise he would not have arranged for Thor to be distributed by Sony Columbia. Their peripheral model is also mature. With Hasbro's support, there is no need to worry about the market conversion not being in place and Marvel suffering losses. It is nothing more than sharing profits. Remember to have PwC check the specific accounts. Also, notify Fox as soon as possible to start the last wave of publicity and attract some traffic attention. They will cooperate. The overseas box office of Captain America has exceeded 150 million. It is a business worth investing in with good returns. Well, the profit margin of the box office is still considerable. After all, there are fewer links. Although the sales of the Marvel adaptation projects in the surrounding area are very good, and other businesses can be integrated to make money, the net profit is not high. It is all hard-earned money. Lyman said dryly, so Lyman couldn't interrupt his boss's bragging. According to this set of perverse logic, because the return ratio of Marvel projects in the box office can account for more than 30% of the total score, and the offline market can hold more than 40% of the income, it looks down on the derivative market of less than 30%. Specific cooperation models are analyzed in detail. There are too many channels and manufacturers, and it is rare for the licensing market to account for even 10%. Little do people know that the cumulative value of the latter is far higher than that of the former. The share is small, but the total amount is high, although most film and television works that lack foundations earn more than the latter. Take Captain America as an example. If we only count the box office and offline home entertainment market, this project can be achieved in the Firefly system. Twilight can do it, and even surpass it, because the Twilight series has low input and high output, a typical high profit series. But in terms of total output, although Captain America is slightly worse than Iron Man, it is not something that can be easily surpassed by a project adapted from a popular novel. There is no other reason. The audience base and the easy spread index. It is obvious that Marvel, a cultural brand that has been laid for decades, still has a very additive effect. To be a little pretentious, a business of more than 1 billion is a failure for Captain America, and this achievement is not impossible to replicate. Marvel's money-making model has always been cumulative expansion. As the project is developed more widely, the audience is more, the popularity is higher, and the spread is more explosive. It is easier to make more money. Even when accumulated to a certain height, with strong capital, it can even reduce the impact of the film quality, pure consumer satisfaction. It was only after taking over Marvel that Lyman discovered in more detail how fast the company was rising. He also thought about why Firefly's best year, 2006, was only about 1.5 billion yuan in business, while Marvel's sequel after the first phase could easily surpass it. Comics, like games, have a very fast audience update speed. A popular game may only have a cycle of 3 or 4 years, but this type of entertainment carrier is easy to have market added value. To put it simply, you used to play a game, but then you stopped playing it. But this game suddenly made a movie of the same name and developed in the direction of film and television. Would you watch it? You have never played this game, but you have heard of it and come into contact with it. One day it made a movie. You watched it and thought it was okay. Your interest was aroused. Would you take the initiative to get in touch with it or just play it yourself? Similarly, Marvel has been active since the 1950s and has influenced many people. This is the greatest wealth in itself, but it lacked guidance and the method was wrong before. Once activated, the copyright value will of course explode. In other words, every potential customer may be transformed into a Marvel user. Isn't this powerful? If Marvel doesn't make money, who will? Chapter 898. The vote is decided. Even if Jesus comes, it will be useless. Please subscribe and vote. June 6th, Saturday. This weekend should have been a rare day off, but Scarlett Johansson had no such intention or mood. She paced in the living room with her phone, actively waiting for news. Obviously, she was a little impatient. The reason for her impatience was not complicated. Hollywood was changing so fast. She was born in the 80s, and her status and resources in the circle were not as good as those born in the 70s who became famous earlier. She was always on guard against being overthrown by those born in the 90s, such as Kristen Stewart, who became famous with Twilight. You know, compared with male stars, female stars have very few opportunities, and their competitive advantages are often very similar. When beauty reaches a certain level, it is equivalent to starting from the same starting line, and it is difficult to distance themselves. At this time, what is often competed is the advantage of tricks or experience, so she really wanted to get the audition opportunity for the role of Iron Man 2. Many people have analyzed with her how much a long-term and successful series can add to an actor. Don't you see that every superstar has at least one series of film experience, which is not only a guaranteed trump card, but also can increase popularity and gather fans, and the market appeal naturally comes out. But similar acting opportunities are relatively scarce projects in the entire Hollywood, and there are only a few that stand out every year, not to mention that some projects look very reliable, but in the end they are nothing. This is why after the news of Iron Man 2 was released, it attracted so much attention, and actors from all walks of life were salivating. Those with connections looked for connections, and those without connections sent resumes normally, or rushing to squeeze in. There is no other reason. Iron Man has been proven to have a market, and has achieved results. In addition, the sequel has low risk and a huge fan base. No matter how you look at it, it is the most reliable of all the first-line blockbusters this year. Unfortunately, because there is no shortage of people, the conditions that people can put forward are more stringent. Even so, Scarlett Johansson still doesn't want to miss it. She also needs a long-term role to ensure that she can go further. Soon, the agent brought good news. She entered the third round of auditions and could go for a tryout in the afternoon. In the car, the agent was still introducing some information about the role. For example, judging from the 10-year contract, Marvel must want to shape the role of Black Widow. The status of the project will not be low, so it is bound in this way. The reason for speculation is that only the roles that are valued will have long-term contract restrictions, and ordinary supporting roles do not need such troubles. Another is the image authorization issue. If the role is determined, a series of image public relations and supporting role markets related to the actor himself need both parties to fulfill their respective responsibilities. Correspondingly, Marvel will pay every year to maintain a certain exposure of the actor, which is also an additional benefit. As for brand cooperation and other commercial cooperation, they are all natural and in line with the situation. In short, even if the space for salary increase is held by the investor Marvel, it is still very beneficial to play Black Widow. Just look at how much money other actors have made from it and how famous they are. The outside world is speculating that Downey will have the opportunity to impact the top 3 actor income list in 2010 with Iron Man 2. This is something he did not do when he was the most popular before. This time, Jessica Alba, Gemma Arterton, Natalie Portman, Jessica Biel, and Emily Blunt are also directly entering the 3rd round. We are under a lot of pressure, the agent muttered, which also made Scarlett sigh. In this world, she is not the only actress who wants to seize the opportunity. When she arrived, she walked into the Firefly building with some trepidation. Marvel Studios is on the 4th to 6th floors. She took the elevator up, and the staff naturally took her to the waiting room and handed her over to the assistant director. Haha, quite punctual. This guy's also Canadian. He was recommended by Denis Villeneuve. He is considered the director's private team. The two have worked together several times. For auditions, he is also responsible for arranging the order, reception, and recording during the auditions. Speaking of which, the latter can also be put into the DVD of Iron Man 2 as a tidbit. Everyone is cheating money in this way, because they are not familiar with each other, and their status in the circle is not equal. There is nothing to talk about. The assistant director was about to leave when Scarlett's agent quickly pulled him back and began to inquire about the details of the audition. The crew was large and full of big names. The assistant director himself also wanted to develop in Hollywood, so it was natural for him to manage relationships. He lowered his voice and said with feeling, "The audition for Black Widow mainly depends on the figure, manners, and temperament, which has little to do with acting skills. As long as you can fit the character image better than others and satisfy the producer Kevin Feige, that's enough." You mean the director? He's just a reference. The decision is up to the producer. Oh, the big boss, you mean Mr. Last. It's not certain whether he will come or not. He may not care about such things. The agent understood a little and muttered to Scarlett. Lemon really didn't care much about the selection of supporting roles. Besides, it was only the 3rd round, and there was still another round to decide. The reason for such trouble was actually to cooperate with the hype. The media and the audience liked this tone. Otherwise, where would the topic come from? Instead of caring about that side, it's better to win over the male lead first. Yes, the salary negotiation with Robert Downey Jr. has already begun. Moreover, the other party's agent team is also very confident, based on the performance of the first Iron Man. Of course, due to the constraints of the long-term contract, it is impossible for Downey to have a higher salary than the other actors and the salaries behind the scenes. Therefore, there are not many points for both parties to tangle. Marvel is definitely willing to give a high salary. After all, the value is there, and more can be earned by giving it out. After several rounds of contacts, adhering to the bottom line of not easily letting go of the project share, Iron Man 2, Downey's basic salary is as high as $30 million, but there is no other salary increase model, and he also agreed to a non-independent series, and his salary is willing to decrease. Compared with the $6.5 million of the first film, it is almost 4.6 times, and considering the benefits of rising popularity and personal image authorization for starring in the movie, it must be a lot, and there is no reason not to agree. In the meeting room, after signing the contract, both parties were in a good mood. Even if they were arguing about some trivial matters before, they can turn around and be in harmony. Joseph followed Lyman back to the office with a smile and suddenly remembered something and reported, "By the way, boss, there is new development on the matter you asked me to pay attention to. It is indeed overspent. News Corporation is actively raising funds and sharing the costs with private equity companies. But do we really want to join in? Believe me, I've decided to invest in Avatar, and even Jesus can't stop me," Lemon thought. Chapter 899 The Twists and Turns of Avatar. Please subscribe and vote. Cameron started preparing for this film in 2005, but it took more than 2 years to develop the 3D technology that can provide a good viewing experience. In other words, more than $100 million were invested before the film was shot. However, unlike what everyone imagined, this project was handled by Fox from beginning to end. Disney was the first to enter the game. In fact, these are not secrets in the industry. Many people are watching and paying attention. You know, Disney was in charge of the 3 IMAX documentaries that Cameron shot with Weta Digital to experiment with technology. However, when Cameron was satisfied with the technical results, he asked the screenwriters to write a story according to the template of Titanic. The most obvious thing is that they all use the structure of the first half of the literary drama, laying the foundation for the second half of the big scenes. There is an emotional line running through the whole film, and the male protagonist is called Jack. The only difference is that Avatar is more expensive and more unreasonable than Titanic. Yes, it is unreasonable. Cameron's proposal of $500 million for the filming instantly made the Disney executives cold. Disney was actually ready to break the record of the highest investment share in film history, but they didn't expect Cameron to ask for so much more than the $330 million for Pirates of the Caribbean 3. The difference of $170 million can make a blockbuster of the level of Wolverine, Captain America, and Transformers, so why don't you go to heaven? What's more, Disney is willing to spend $330 million to make Pirates of the Caribbean 3 because this project can appreciate in value and increase other revenues. As Avatar is the first movie to be shot entirely with 3D technology, the script is still original and has no mass base because the new technology is too expensive. Cameron has to continue to increase the budget to hire a superstar for 3D theater screenings. It is unknown whether the audience is willing to spend that wasted money and many other risks. In other words, because it is Cameron, and because of the miracle of Titanic, Disney is willing to take a chance. Anyway, it has developed well in recent years, and has strong funds, but the investment share proposed by this guy is still far beyond expectations, making Disney unable to see the profit prospects. Imagine that once Avatar fails at the box office and lacks other monetization bases, even Disney doesn't want to see it, and no one can take responsibility. Disney has so many shareholders, and many of them can enter the board of directors. How can the interests of so many people be easily bettered? Therefore, Disney hesitated for a while and still refused to invest. Cameron simply turned around and flirted with his old employer Universal with the project. Of course, Lyman came. He would certainly not miss the opportunity to join the bidding battlefield with a clear clue and a clear eye. If it is an ordinary project with certain profit potential, Lyman actually doesn't need to hold it all in his hands. He can honestly develop Marvel and supplement it with some original works, and then accumulate strength and slowly move towards the top. After all, the layout of his overseas distribution network is also coming to an end. Rodriguez Perelman reported to him not long ago, and the progress is gratifying. But Avatar is really more critical. Not to mention Fox's saucy operation, just the release of Goodwill to win over Cameron in the box office that broke through the ceiling are enough to make people pay so much attention to him. How did Fox win Avatar? With its parent company News Corporation badly hurt and insufficient cash flow due to the stock market crash, their investment proportion was surprisingly small, and the whole process can be summarized as a textbook case of borrowing chickens to lay eggs. Fox's funds came from many investment companies, of which the 2 largest private equity institutions D&M undertook $150 million, accounting for 60% of the investment share. In addition, Cameron and Weta Digital spent $140 million on technology development, which had to be returned to Disney, and signed a technology licensing contract. Fox also didn't want to pay this money. The tricky operation continued. Haven't theaters been innovating and promoting IMAX giant screen theaters to make the viewing effect better and retain the audience lost due to other entertainment methods? So they also signed an agreement with the theaters, promising that after the filming of the film was completed, these more mature technology patents could be licensed to other studios, reducing the difficulty of 3D production, improving the source of films, and recovering part of the cost, while promoting the industry. In addition, they reached a communication with Weta Digital and squeezed out a sum of money from special effects companies such as Industrial Light and Magic, and the burden was easily solved. Even in terms of publicity, Fox's own financial report shows that it spent $150 million, which was also using the huge advertising resources of News Corporation to transfer money from one hand to the other and allocate it to its own people. In other words, Fox actually invested less than 200 million, but it got more than 2.7 billion in global box office results. It just gave up a lot of profits to those private equity institutions while making money, but the biggest share was still Fox. Help me make an appointment with John Landor. Lyman instructed Joseph. Since we have to take advantage of Disney to get in, and the project is stranded, we must not let Fox use routines to take over. During this period, Fox was under great pressure, and of course we couldn't let them make huge cash from Avatar and revitalize assets faster. In the future, Fox is also one of Man Media's targets. How can we just sit there and watch when we can dig up a pillar of the station? As for why we made an appointment with John Landor, this guy is Cameron's right-hand man and Cameron's exclusive producer. The two also opened a film studio together. Of course, we have to impress both of them at the same time to quickly enter the game and seize the opportunity. Universal is also worried. James, should we lower the conditions? John Landor frowned and looked at Cameron, who was still calm at the desk. Just like in the previous life, the old club Universal did not dare to gamble. After all, the series of expenses were close to 500 million, and it would take 1.5 billion worldwide to make a profit at the box office. The ceiling is still very high. You know, the first place in film history is still Titanic with 2.187 billion, but the second place Lord of the Rings 3 6 years ago was only 1.142 billion, with a gap of more than 1 billion. Industry insiders also generally regard the latter as a standard for box office evaluation. What is revealed is still the accumulation of sequels at this time on the box office list. Except for cartoons, 80% are sequels, and the trend is quite obvious. As a qualified producer, he can see the decline of original projects, but Cameron hopes that the original Avatar will carry the new technology that breaks the era. The preliminary preparations and even the framing modeling are in this direction, and there is no retreat. Thinking of this, as well as the fact that Disney and Universal had given up one after another, John Landor was also under great pressure. Just as he was about to give some more advice, the phone rang. An unexpected studio with plenty of cash offered an olive branch. Chapter 900 funding and soft power, subscriptions, votes. Just knowing that Avatar lacks funds, it is not easy to get involved. Of course, there is room for maneuver. With Joseph's relieved expression, Lyman and Lyman sat together. Many project scripts were neatly arranged on the desk. Some of them Lyman had read and marked, but there were still many to be read. Boss, we want to invest in Cameron's project, and we need a little impetus. After Lyman knew Lyman's plan, he also understood that it would not work just to throw money at it. In terms of distribution, we can't afford it alone. We have to find a backer first, otherwise we can't do it big and the risk is too high. Backed by Marvel and its own blood-making channels, Man Media's cash reserves have accumulated nearly 1.25 billion. Money has never been a problem, and Cameron is not just for money, otherwise he wouldn't have to keep going back and forth between the 5 majors and never considered other production companies. Hollywood is a circle with relatively mature rules of the game. Even if it's all about money, there are different levels. It's the same 100 million yuan. Producers and directors will be overjoyed for the investment of the big 5, but they may not be interested in some small companies that can't even do theatrical distribution. Just like when Lyman couldn't contact the senior executives of the French local studios, he would rather go to the film festival to gamble his luck than rush into the offline market. Soft power has always been the standard for measuring the thickness of capital. Even now, Man Media seems to be thriving, and its capital chain is very healthy, but Blue Butterfly Pictures, including Firefly Productions, still has few opportunities to take over the business of outsiders. This is not a question of vision or not, but everyone is rushing for the top resources. When well-known producers in the industry discover projects that they think are good, the first thing they think of is the big 5 with whom they are familiar with cooperation. It feels like a talent show. The first-class ones are first screened by the strongest ones, and the rest are screened by Searchlight, Focus and other manufacturers that specialize in pursuing independent works, and then Lionsgate, and then Man, Screen Treasures, Constantine Films and other companies with slightly inferior soft power compete for it. In other words, those who actively seek cooperation with Man Media have been screened several times. The risk is already very high, and the hope of finding treasures is not great. It is better to be put into cold storage from the beginning, such as Breaking Bad, Little Miss Sunshine, and You Know That have been missed. Cameron is the same. He is not stupid. If he does not have a strong publicity and distribution channel to back him up, he will really joke about his career prospects and reputation. If Avatar fails, Cameron will definitely not have a good time. So if he wants to impress them, Lyman must pull in an ally in advance and continue to make concessions when his own strength really needs time and experience accumulation. So, the topic that Lyman talked about with Lyman was basically the schedule arrangements and cooperation intentions of the 5 major companies, and to pick the most suitable one from them. First of all, Fox was excluded. As for the other 4 companies, if they only undertake the distribution work, they would not have the heart to refuse, even if they were Universal and Disney who had already disembarked. After all, there is no need to bear the risk, and the advertising resources are transferred from one hand to the other hand. If they are not used, it will be wasted, and the operating costs must be borne. Why not? Of these 4, Warner Brothers is definitely the most in need. After all, they have already lost money on 3 blockbusters in 2009, and are in urgent need of results. It would be better if there is no production risk. However, Lyman still wants to take the idea of DC adaptation rights, so he ruled it out. Paramount, there are many disputes. Although Shirley Lansing has stepped down, Lyman still does not want to have too much contact with it, so he ruled it out. The only ones left are Sony, Columbia and Universal. The latter has worked with Cameron, so Lyman is inclined to Sony. There is no other reason. Sony has become the king in the field of audiovisual products, and the copyright library resources in its hands are also the most abundant. Handing it over to Sony for operation can increase the upper limit of the copyright development of Avatar, but so too, the terms of profit sharing may not be too low. Considering the pros and cons, Lyman certainly still likes the project cake to be bigger and everyone to share it more freely. After all, the audience group of Avatar is not single. After all the preparations were adjusted, Lyman went to communicate with Columbia and John Landor, and Lyman naturally went to meet Cameron. Around 5 p.m., Lyman met James Cameron in casual clothes at the private club. He still looked the same, but he looked older. But he was in good spirits. Under his thin body, he still had that kind of paranoia. Of course, Cameron had more thoughts than when Lyman met him. I remember that the first time they sat down to talk was because of the sale of Digital Domains shares. The second time, Lyman could easily come up with $500 million to invest in a movie, and it was a movie that was rejected by Disney and Universal. For such things, even Cameron felt that the world was changing too fast. Fortunately, although he was obsessed with utilitarianism, he actually hated managing trivial matters. On the contrary, he could retain a more enterprising and exploratory spirit for movies. Being young is young, being powerful is powerful, and being rich is rich. As long as it doesn't affect my filming of Avatar, it's fine. It's best to watch the scene and the post-production of the film. Yes, the meeting between the two today was not only important to Lyman, but also of great significance to Cameron. Don't forget that Cameron's studio still owes Disney and Weta Digital project money. To be honest, this guy has made so many movies and has not saved any money. He either gave it to his wife after divorce or spent it on enjoying life. Moreover, Hasbro knows how to find a backer to develop projects, and Marvel also has a lot of profits. Cameron and John Landor have long thought that they can also match them with one of the 5 major companies after taking Lyman's money. In other words, Cameron recognized Lyman's investment strength. What he had to do was to strive for the conditions to be implemented as soon as possible. Avatar should not and cannot be delayed. So after the two sat down, Cameron directly took out the script and scene storyboards that had been finalized long ago. I understand the doubts of you people. Why is it an original project and the design of dramatic conflicts is too simple? As a director, Cameron had to deal with investors as a routine. After Avatar was established, it was also a lot of trouble, so he set the tone as soon as he opened his mouth to avoid unclear explanations. If you put aside the background and worldview, this is indeed a very simple story. Is it old-fashioned? I don't think it is innovative, but I never care about how complicated the script is, or how novel the narrative is. The key is how you tell the story. Every director has his own way of telling stories. I can understand that, Mr. Cameron. Lemon smiled and said, compared to this, I would like to know more about your original intention in conceiving Avatar and what you think the movie will be like when it is shot. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.